Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, June 7th, 2018 meeting of the Timberlane Regional School Board. Call to order, Mrs. Belcher.
Brian Boyle.
Present.
Lee Doobie.
Here.
Kim Farah. Dan Guide.
Here.
Sarah Mockamer. Here. Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Sue Sherman.
Here.
Jennifer Silva. Kelly Ward.
Here.
Also seated with the board this evening is the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler. The presence of other district administrators as well as Timberlane Teachers Association officers will be reflected in the meeting minutes.
If we could stand and say the pledge, please. Would you like to lead us in the pledge, sir?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have some minutes to approve. I think it's just one set, May 17th. Couple of minutes. We had a chance to look those over. Oh, would you, sorry, Mrs. Belcher, can you go back? We met Dr. Farah, she's excused, she's at a senior event and she spoke to me today. She may possibly be here late, so I wanted to. Back to the minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept the minutes from May 17th, 2018.
Motion by Mr. Guide.
Second.
Second by Mr. Boyle. Gotta be quicker than that, Mrs. Markler.
Seriously, my goodness, get me on my toes tonight.
Speak right up. Any changes, corrections, questions? Hearing none, we'll vote to accept, please. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? 2, 5, 0, 2. Thank you. Student rep. Well, our student rep is off this evening, being a senior. This is a huge week for seniors, big events, and we wish them all well, and we miss Brian tonight, but he'll be back for his final meeting on June 21st and introduce us to our next rep at that time. So he did send me an email and told me he didn't think he could be here, so I thought it would be all right. Delegates and individuals, we do have some. Delaney Marcotte. Hi, Delaney, come right up, sit at the table. You're fine. How are you?
Good.
What are you here to talk to us about?
Hi, my name is Delaney. I live in Plastow, New Hampshire, and I am a 5th grader at Pollard's Elementary School. I am here to talk about a problem that means a lot to me. Bullying. Bullying is a problem in our school. I am a victim of it. My parents have contacted the school about it, but it continues. It happened to me and my classmates. I have been asked by the mother of my bully during a school field trip why I tried to get her son in trouble. I have been threatened to get shot in the head by an AK-47 and buried in my backyard and many other things. I ask you, what are you going to do to protect me and my classmates against bullying? I am here to stand up for every kid that gets bullied.
Very proud of you for coming.
Thank you.
Liz Costa.
Good evening, my name is Liz Costa from Plastow. I'm here tonight to ask the school board to start your work regarding the district's strategic plan. Many people have spent hours upon hours of their time to make sure there was a draft for the school board to review, as well as district money to pay for consultants to assist with the data collection, which was done at 2 district venues, the middle school and Sandown. As the district has spent money and many employees and community members have given of their time, it is now time for you to do your job. If in fact Mr. Guide and Mr. Doobie have stepped up and are willing to take on this task, the time is now. Let's have the new strategic plan in place for the new school year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Costa. Current business, we have an Eagle Scout project this evening. Come on up. And I think in your packet, you have a PowerPoint. Charlie has a PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
And that's set, ready to go?
Yeah.
Should be the same thing as,
Yeah. Yep. I just wanted to say before, thank you for having me on the school board. I really appreciate it. Hello, my name is Charlie Gashard. I am from Troop 9 in Atkinson, and I'm currently working towards my Eagle Scout. Today I will be presenting my proposal for the Eagle Scout project. I am proposing a natural outdoor barrier at Atkinson Academy around the outdoor classroom. If you look up here, there's some reasons why I have it. Currently at Atkinson Academy, the outdoor classroom is very underused, even though it is a great spot for educational activities. The reason for this is because of the constant traffic that will be outside at the on the road right outside. The children will divert their attention away from the instructor, and they will mostly focus on the cars driving by, and they won't be able to get as much out of it as they normally would. So to fix this issue, I'm proposing that I plant a natural barrier of perennial bushes between the road and the outdoor classroom. Up here you'll see on the far right there will be the road. In the middle there's the outdoor classroom, and it consists of about 8 benches. And then my proposal is that I mulch an area and plant about 5 bushes. I'm planting rhododendrons to be there. With this will block off view of the road so that the teacher will be able to have the attention of the children. For reference, if you do not know where the outdoor classroom is, it is right around here. Atkinson Academy is at the top center, and then there's Academy Avenue right below it. So for the costs and funding, I plan to have 5 bushes, and I'm going to get them from Freshwater Farms. They will each be about $70, so the bushes cost will be $350, and then for the mulch, I plan to get 2/3 of a cubic yard, which will be about $30. But for the funding, I plan to go to various donation groups like the Lions Club and the Women's Civics Club, and they will be able to donate, and this will be funded by them. So for the timeline, I plan to complete this within the next month or 2. Any questions? Yes.
Danny?
when do you plan on going in front of your Eagle board to ask them if this is acceptable or not?
August 1st is the, yeah.
So this is the first step. We accept the project, then the Eagle Board accepts the project, then you do the project,
Yes.
then we vow that if you're donating it to the school, we will maintain the project for you. We've had numbers and numbers and numbers of Eagle Scout projects, tremendous projects. Once you give them to the school entity, we vow to protect and maintain that. So you're doing just shrubs there.
Yes, and I'm mulching the area, yes.
So any other questions? Someone want to make a motion to accept the project?
I'll motion to accept his Eagle Scout project.
Motion made by Mr. Guide, a second, and Mr. O'Neill. Any other questions? Sounds like a good one, Charlie.
Thank you.
Oh, Mrs. Atkinson. Mrs. Deotis will love it out there.
Well, one of the other Eagle Scouts put a board up there, and whiteboards, so
Good.
that the teachers can write on it.
Oh, that's
and
great.
Have an actual
Great.
classroom out there, so.
Great. Get
It'll
them
be nice.
outside.
This will really shield it.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And we need to vote, so you might want to wait.
Oh, yeah, that would be good.
Surprise. All in favor? I think it's unanimous, Charlie. Go for it. Plant away. Thank
Thank you.
you. Next on our agenda, we have some donations. Is that correct?
Good evening. I am Kevin Fitzgerald. I'm a phys ed teacher and football coach at the high school. This is Patty Jo Hayes. She is the Timberlane Football Booster Club president. We are here to seek approval and acceptance of a very generous donation from the Booster Club for the purchase of an end zone camera system for our football team, and also to seek approval for continuance of our sponsorship program, which includes soliciting local businesses for donations in exchange for hanging a signage on the sidelines on Friday nights during our home games. This is a program that has been approved for a bunch of years now by the board, and we are coming because we have to seek approval every other year to keep this program going, and we're up this year for the 18 and 19 season, correct?
So you're looking for 2 years of approval
Yes.
tonight? And one end zone camera?
One end zone camera. We use a sideline camera, and we are seeking to get an end zone camera to give us a second view of the game. It's an excellent teaching tool, both in-game and post-game for our players and coaches. We've done some research with other teams that we play in our league who have the end zone camera system. So we've looked at different models and found out what coaches like, what coaches don't like with different brands, and we've kind of settled on one that we like, and we're seeking the approval for the donation from the booster program.
Questions or willing to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Kelly's making a motion. You want to do both things? Yeah. So we're making one motion, if that's okay with everybody, for the donation of the end zone camera. Thank you very much.
Second
And
motion.
And approve.
I'll second the motion.
And the approval of the 2-year signage. Mr. Boyle's second, and he's eager to second, so.
Keep it moving. Sounds like a great plan.
Questions or comments? Always nice to accept things.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
we need to
Thank you to
vote.
the Booster Club.
All in favor? Looks unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Lori, next time, don't talk so much, just. Okay. Policies, second read. Let me get that light, I can't see. Thank you. So when last we left off, Lee, are you presenting? Policies?
I guess I am. So we have 6 in front of us this evening. Are they in the packets?
They are. They're.
They would have this thick cover sheet. There we
This
go.
thick.
Thank you. 6 policies for second read, all approved by the policy committee. So we have BG, the board policy process, BGA, policy development system, BGB, policy adoption, BGC, policy review and evaluation, IHCA, summer learning, and IMG, animals in schools. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, only IHCA and IMG were changed, the rest were just reaffirmed.
Sue, can I?
Sure.
Do you want to just, remember we had the discussion about the times when policies were reaffirmed by previous boards, but the dates weren't listed, and how that was something.
Yeah, so you
We'll
talked
look-
about that process?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in looking at the policies at our first policy committee meeting, it was evident that there wasn't really a well-defined reevaluation, reaffirmation cycle, and there was no tracking mechanism. So when you looked at our policies, it tells, most of them told you when they were revised, but never when they were reaffirmed. So it made it difficult to say, well, when was that policy last reviewed? And to me, my background with policy and procedures, you usually have some type of time frame between the review and reapproval process. So our next policy committee meeting, we're going to begin undergoing that process where, even though a process may not change, we'll reaffirm it on a certain
All right.
life cycle.
Okay, so
And-
reaffirming may not be making any changes at all. A
That's correct.
revision is making a change.
And that's the
Gotcha.
exact definition.
And that was the point I was trying to make, that some were reaffirmed by previous boards, the date just didn't, some said reaffirm, some did not, and we knew that they had been looked at, and
Yeah.
the cycle, we said, was somewhere between 3 and 5 years to get through all, how many policies altogether?
900.
No, there's two.
90 maybe,
Two,
something?
yeah, it was high twos, almost 300. So we're going to go through and we'll bubble sort through those policies to determine which ones need immediate review because of a legal change, and we'll bring those up to the top of the list, and then which ones fall in line behind that. And that'll get us on a cycle, and we won't, our goal isn't to review all 200 X policies this season, because then it just creates a waterfall backlog where if the review cycle's 3 years, well, every 3 years, a policy committee has to look at every single policy and reaffirm those.
Right.
So we'll break those up over a series of years, and that should hopefully put us into a good routine of reevaluation, reassessment.
Keeps them fresh.
Yeah, it keeps them fresh, exactly.
When these were brought to us 2 weeks ago, didn't we send one back? We did. That's not in here.
The bidding one. The bidding one
bidding
got
one.
the policy, so it's scheduled to be reviewed again.
Yeah,
by
we,
them.
that one's, that one's.
We were unable to meet this evening
Right,
because of
okay.
the courting ceremony at the high school.
So I was hoping it wasn't still in here. I'm sorry, Sean.
Yeah, I got a questions on a couple of these policies. The first one being BG. Very last paragraph on here, it says actions on such proposals, whatever their source, is taken finally by the board after receiving the recommendation of the superintendent. I would not think that I would definitely want to solicit the superintendent's opinion on a matter, but I don't think it should be a requirement for this board to make a decision. I says that would basically make him the emperor and would dictate that, and I don't believe that that's his intent, but with reading this policy and verbatim, that would basically give Dr. Metzler complete veto power on any policy that was presented before
On
this
any
committee.
policy?
Pardon?
On any policy, I didn't read it as that, but,
It says recommendation, it doesn't.
But if he decides not to put anything forward, then that means that this board cannot
Well, the
review the
policy-
policy.
Policy
but
committee
the
puts
policy
stuff
committee puts
forward.
things forth. The recommendation would be, that fits what we're already doing, or,
The superintendent could say, hey, I don't agree with BGA, and Lee can sit here and say, well, this is the way, what policy came up with. We know he didn't agree with it. That's what
But
that.
it's the board, it doesn't say the committee. It's the board that makes the policies. We're the ones that adopt it, Dan.
Right.
taken finally by the board.
This is what we're doing right now.
Correct.
So
And if
Earl can
that-
have an opinion about any of this stuff. It's not gonna matter how we vote.
But if he hasn't, if he has not presented that opinion to us, we could not act on it.
Oh, I don't see that that way at all.
That's not accurate.
So if you keep going, the superintendent bases his or her recommendations upon the outcomes of study, upon the judgment of the professional staff. He's giving us the best advice about a particular topic.
And then we move forward.
That's how I read that.
Through your board committee.
Right,
Right.
because he's on, yeah.
The policy committee would develop the policy.
I do, I understand how this works, but I mean, the way that it's written in the language here is that if Dr. Metzler didn't want a particular policy adopted, and I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but I'm just saying what the potential here is that if he doesn't want something, he just has to withhold his recommendation of that policy. And the policy committee, they could do whatever they want, but this board would not be able to vote on it with the policy adopted as is.
That's not accurate.
That's not accurate at all.
It comes,
That's
the
correct.
policies come to you from the policy committee, not from me.
Lee's deciding the schedule. Am I wrong?
Yes. Yeah, I think I see where you're getting on this.
It's the language
It's
that
that is taken finally by the board after receiving the recommendation. So you're reading that as no action be taken if a recommendation, I see what you're saying.
Exactly.
It's that word after.
Brian?
I mean, I would encourage the solicitation, of course, of that, and he should provide it. But if he does not want to provide one, and this board determines that a policy is just that it should be adopted, that shouldn't behold us to obtaining a recommendation from the superintendent for us to adopt that. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay, Brian?
Okay, thanks. I understand the point Sean is making, but I would think that that last paragraph, because you know how this policy is solely about the board policy process.
Right.
So I would think that should be spelled out that the process is, policies are recommended by the superintendent and his team, go through the school board policy, and then subcommittee, then on to the full school board.
Do you want to send this back
I
to
think, yeah,
revise that
just
language
that
a little
language.
bit?
Last
That we're not-
paragraph.
That's that last
Just to
paragraph. That's
spell
that-
it out.
Well, that's because that's what this is. This
Is
is
the process.
Right.
board policy process. So
Right.
the process is, it goes through the superintendent and the staff, up through the policy committee to the full board.
You're almost getting into procedure.
Well, that's what it
That would
says,
be-
process.
I know that would be a BGR. But here's the thing, so that, what Brian's saying is accurate to some point, but not completely, because it doesn't, we don't write a policy to give to the policy committee to give to the, it's just a matter of recommendations that have to do with the way the work is done.
Correct.
And the policy committee can, and even the policy committee can even say that's a great idea, and then you bring it here and you say, no, I don't think so.
No.
Right?
Well,
Or- Right? I mean, it's not,
in a spirit of collaboration, would we be all right, take it back, understanding what Sean's point is. I don't agree totally with what Sean's saying would happen, but clean that up a little bit. Look at what New Hampshire School Boards Association best practice states, because they are modeled on that.
I think that's where this comes from.
I believe this is all from that, but let's just do a little cleaning up so that we can collaborate and agree that this is the board policy process. All right with that?
Yeah.
Can we consensus that to send it back? Lee, are you,
I'm good.
okay.
I have another question, though, on policy George Boy. In the emergency procedures down there, which is the second to last paragraph, where it has the 2/3 majority of the votings, that I believe would be illegal. There's no RSAs that say that simple majorities, that's all that's needed. I actually asked that of Mr. O'Shaughnessy when we were talking about the, when we were back here, we were talking about the warrant article to have the school board have the ability to spend from the capital reserve fund, and I was actually proposing maybe we could do it as a 2/3 or something like that, and he says no, he says you can't do that, it's simple majority for any action by the board.
I don't think that's correct on that.
This is to waive our own policy. It's a policy to waive our own policy. So if you want to change it, you can, but 2/3 isn't illegal.
Yeah, you have a revoke, a policy.
Yeah, it's
Revocation of
our
policy.
own policy. It's not,
Mr. O'Shaughnessy about this as
we're not
well.
citing the law. We want to waive, we want to make it, we could make it a full 100% majority, 100%. It's our policy.
I disagree, Dan.
Okay.
To say that we
Again-
can't do something when we legally can is, it's, we can adopt that.
We can change it.
Again, I would bet that this 2/3 majority is a recommendation from the New Hampshire School Boards Association for best practices for policy writing. Hasn't been revised since, at least here, since 2009.
It's an adequate motion.
His comment when we were discussing this is that, because I was looking to propose the 2/3 majority for us to spend from that capital reserve fund if we were granted the warrant article by the voters. And he says that you can't, the RSAs don't say relative to just it's a simple majority unless it's codified in the RSAs, like, a bonding or something like that, where you gotta get 2/3 or 60%, depending upon what your charter is of your town or district.
I think that the difference there is you're talking about something governed by statute
Right.
and financially related. This is just relative to
Our policy.
policy and
Policies.
procedure.
This is when it's going to be,
I think that's the difference there.
I think we was making
You
that
have-
every, I mean, we
sorry,
could look
Sean.
into it, I don't.
You have a policy that you adopted or revised a year ago, policy BGH, that has to do with waiving, suspending, and revoking policies. So I think that these are all interconnected somehow, some way. And we've done quite a bit of work to try to get them all coordinated. I understand what Sean's saying in terms of simple majority, but I'm not sure where that two-third majority came from, other than, I think it was work
Trying
from
to line
the
them all
board
up.
Policy committee. I don't know if you looked at that one, that,
No, I
I
didn't,
think
I
it
didn't
has to
see
do with
it.
the notice. I think that if there is a notice, and it's the same with action of the board, if something, if an item isn't noticed, if the board isn't noticed about an action item, then it could require a two-thirds majority versus, and that might be the language that they're talking about as it relates to an emergency. It's not talking about modifying the policy, it's
Waive the
talking about.
2-week limitation.
Right, let's talk about an emergency procedure. Again, it's the emergency, no notice to the board, there's a two-thirds vote requirement. So I think.
So it
that
kind of
language
ups
is
the
all together.
ante to do
Well, I understand the
something.
intent of it, but it just, it's, I just don't think that it would
You
be
think it-
governed in law, I mean, in the New Hampshire law.
To change our policies, you think that?
No, we
it's-
could change them, but I'm
That's
just,
what it,
do you think it limits what the board can do? Is that your concern?
well, yeah, because I mean, simple majority and a two-thirds is definitely
Two
a big
different
difference.
things.
Yep. Well, it's one vote. If all 9 people are here. Right,
No, you'd have to get 7.
no, 6/3, 6/9, 2/3.
6-9.
6 out of 9 is 2/3.
Yeah, sure, right, all right, I thought it was
Okay.
greater than one, more than that.
What's the board's pleasure here? Leave it as is?
I say leave it as.
I'm personally not too concerned from something from.
Brian, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm not too concerned about it, so.
You're fine with it?
Yep.
Something, Danny?
Is there a motion on the floor?
No, there isn't.
I make a
allowed the
motion to
discussion
send
beforehand.
BG back to, policy.
BG back to policy. A second?
I'll second that.
Sean? All in favor?
7-0.
I'm opposed simply
Opposed.
because I represented
That's
on
fine,
behalf of the
that's
policy
fine.
committee.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss that vote? So it was 6-1?
6-1.
I'm sorry.
6-1-0. And now the other policies? Go ahead, Dan.
A motion to, adopt policy BGA, BGB, BGC, IHCA, and IMG.
Second that.
Second by Mr. Ward.
Would you entertain a motion to do all of those except for the one that I brought up, the VGB?
No, because I'm fine with it.
Well, that's okay, I'm just trying to give you support for the other ones and.
Oh, she wants to vote for the other ones, but not that. Would you be willing?
So I want to vote no on one particular one. It's fine.
Not willing to, okay. So we have a motion on the floor to accept the other policies as is. We have a second. Any other discussion? Not, I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor of the policies? 5? 6?
6.
3, 4, 5, 6. Didn't count myself. Opposed? 1.
Thank you.
Thank you for policy, so. Okay. Tuition rates. Are you hi, Mr. Dowd, are you presenting?
You should all have a memorandum
We do.
in my office.
Says memo, and behind it, we put the, policy. Trying to make sure you see those and have those at your fingertips, each thing that we're doing as we go along.
Annually, the school board approves tuition rates for students who tuition into district schools, and I calculate those rates. Historically, George Stokinger calculated those rates based on the Department of Education cost per student that they report out at each level for our district. And based on that, the rates are assembled and presented to the board annually for approval. The special education rate that you see, and this is a little different than what we had done last year, the special education rate is a higher rate, but in order to better articulate what that rate actually involves, I've included an asterisk at the bottom specifying what what that rate, to what level and what degree of support we can provide to special education students and what would be an additional cost. So it's a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. If you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. You can see for kindergarten rate of $8,600, elementary $17,200, middle school $17,000, high school $17,000, special education $34,300.
So let's get a motion on the floor, and then I'll entertain some questions and discussion.
I'll motion to accept the tuition rates as presented.
Dan and Kelly, thank you. Questions, comments? Danny?
So we're pretty close now into the next year. Are we or aren't we going to receive any more aid or money from Keno? Do you know that answer yet?
I don't know
I know
that.
that they're very dodgy with you and not with people too.
Remarkably so.
Yes, that's what I've heard. So you haven't heard anything on that?
I haven't heard anything on that. However, we have received some additional adjustments for adequacy, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah, so little surprises keep coming in. You never know. No.
We'll keep accepting those surprise
We'll keep
adequacies, I'm sure.
gladly
but-
accepting
yeah.
those surprises.
Oh, hi, Jen. You're here, glad you're here. Go ahead.
Maybe you said it and I just missed it because I was pulling it out, but the elementary tuition, why is that higher than the others?
Based on what the costs work out to and factor out to, and typically at the elementary level, you've got, and the superintendent can probably articulate it a little bit better than I can, but you've got lower student to instructor ratios and more teachers. Yeah.
Sean?
The special education dollar amount of 34,000. You know, I see the caveat down here, special education rates does not include costs associated with specialized services, specialized transportation, or one-to-one assistance. My question would be is like, what does, special ed encompass? Would that be that base figure? Is it basically anybody with an IEP that would be that amount?
Yeah, well, an IEP, 504 plan, so disabilities, that could be learning disabilities, they could be physical disabilities, so it's anything that would be special. But
Would that be, I could see that being a big, very broad spectrum of services that are needed for in an individual IEP.
That's correct. And this is an average, so it could be far north of 34,300. But that's, you're talking about support staff, that would be, all those expenses that would go into what would be considered special education. One of the things when I first started, because I referred to the gifted population as special education too, and I remember I got a kind of like a lot of like hairy eyeballs, because it is, but that's not included in this. This is special education that you're referring to, which would be IEP, disabilities, accommodations, modifications that need to be made, those sorts of things.
Would this figure for special education include, specialized instructions, say if they needed, swallowing, services or blind?
Any and all, Orton Gillingham, Wilson Reading Program, any kind of specialized instruction, any kind of modifications, any kind of, anything we need to do in order to give them equal access to the curriculum. So some of it's physical, some of it's learning disabilities, all those sorts of things. They all factor in. Again, the average cost, I think, is really where we're at.
Hi, Jen, go ahead.
I'm assuming, but I don't want to assume, so I'll ask, that kindergarten rate, that's a full day rate?
Correct.
Yes.
And then, do we know how many special ed versus regular ed students we tuition in now?
We really don't.
Okay.
We really don't. If we
I
have,
didn't have a question, Jen. What
Can
did
I
you-
ask a question of the tuition in for kindergarten or tuition in just in general?
And just in general.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think if it was a kindergarten question, our goal was to have our kindergarten population mirror our regular population. That would be true about free and reduced lunch and special education. It's not exact, but it's pretty close.
Is that a number we can get for Mrs. Silver?
Yeah, no, I didn't mean, I know what you're asking, no, I wasn't talking about the in-district, you're asking if I meant the in-district people who pay kindergarten tuition?
Yeah, that's what I thought
No,
when you
no.
said, because, I know you're talking about how many outside
Yeah.
and pay tuition, like, for instance, if they came from Hampstead or Derry
Another
or somewhere
out of
else.
district.
Out of district.
Yeah,
but
I
pay
don't-
for a special ed
one.
It's not a
Or
lot.
regular ed.
or regular
I
ed?
was just wondering how many.
Oh, how many are tuition in,
Yeah.
period?
So how
Attorney
many?
Dowd
are
is saying he thinks it's one. It's not a lot. This is like one of those, when people ask sometimes about, well, I want to send my son or daughter there, and then Kathy takes the call and talks to them about, like, okay, well, you're not a resident, so you have to think about paying tuition. And then there's some specific questions that are asked, and if they need special services, that's the cost to tuition in if you don't live in district. So sometimes that would be, sometimes it's another district that might send them, and the district might pay.
District would pay.
But sometimes it's, the parents might choose to pay. It doesn't happen very often when they hear $34,300. It seems to be cost prohibitive from that option. You know, sometimes those other numbers aren't as daunting to folks, but it is one of those things, I think, that right now, it's talking about educational hardship and those sorts of things that its districts are picking up the tab to send students to other districts. These wouldn't be our cost to send somebody somewhere else. They'd have a list like this for us to say, if we want to send one of our students somewhere else, they'd say, are they special ed? It could be a lot more than that, or it could be less than that. That tends to be about the average in that mid-30s, right?
I would say,
Yeah.
but it has to be mitigated relative to what the services are that are provided.
Right.
And we have to have something, we have to have some measurement, some tuition number, some base tuition number out there, because there are situations that the state will place students in the district.
And I don't want to mislead, those when we place students out at special schools, this is much different. This is district to district. This would be a Timberlane student at Sanborn, or a Sanborn student at Timberlane, or Pinkerton, and those sorts of things. This is what, these are typically around the costs that we would have to incur if we were to send them out.
So I'm still trying to be collaborative and get Mrs. Silva's question answered. Is that question possible to answer for her? Round numbers, about how many?
No, that's all right. I mean, that's fine. I
don't
mean,
want-
it sounds like it's like minuscule, so that's fine.
Yeah, and
Don't worry about it.
to put perspective on it, it's better to have something out there to have the district be protected. And previously, we didn't have any real caveats on what that special education covered, that tuition covered. And in certain situations, we could say, well, we can't provide the level of services that the student may require adequately here for the resources that are being provided. However, we're seeing a little bit more that students may be placed. And if they're placed for whatever reason here, or by the state, or by one of the agencies, another district may be responsible for those costs. We definitely want to have that in there, that, hey, this is what it is, and this is what it does not include, or this is what it does include, so we have some protection.
And so just a conversation we've had at the board level many times in previous years, our sharing with Hampstead in terms of Pinkerton versus our high school, it's typically high school students. And we would look sometimes, when appropriate, sometimes a Timberlane student might be going to Pinkerton, or a Pinkerton student might be going to Timberlane, and it was like a one-for-one kind of thing. But part of that discussion was, is it really a one-for-one if one of them was a special ed student and one was not? So we look at that before we actually place students, because that could be cost prohibitive as well. But occasionally, a Hampstead student will end up in Timberlane, and Hampstead will pick up the cost of special education because the services here are services that they didn't have, and vice versa.
Other questions about, we have a motion on the floor, so to accept these rates. There's no end of questions. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Looks unanimous. 8. Summer hours. Who's going to talk about summer hours?
Summer hours, traditionally, actually, Mr. Geary could come up, I don't want to put you on the spot, but our summer hours have been traditionally, once school is out, and we have gone to a 4-day work week, which is, it's a 10-hour days, providing our maintenance and custodial staff opportunities to do projects and work in buildings, save some energy, electricity with heating and cooling, those sorts of things. SAU is not open on Fridays as well already. So if you want to talk a little bit about the savings and the projects and those sorts of things as to why we've moved to this model. It's been this way since I've been here. It's about 7 or 8 weeks, 6, 7, 8 weeks in the summer.
Yeah, sure. So we find the unoccupied time on Fridays to be extremely beneficial to our custodial and maintenance staff, and also our contractors that we bring in. One example I can think of is gym floor refinishing. Very, very strong odors that is best to be done in a building that's unoccupied, and it takes, a couple days to flush out the building. And on top of that, just being able to kill the building for an additional day per week offers us some tremendous savings as well, and less runtime on the equipment. The custodians are very good about working in a building. They don't need to fully cool the whole building while they're working. So, we find it very beneficial, and can definitely appreciate the energy savings by doing so.
Remind the board that the SAU did it at their spring meeting ahead of us. They've already approved it from their angle for it, so we're looking for action to approve. Danny?
I'll motion to accept the 4-day work week
I'll second.
For the Timberlane employees, or however you want to word it.
So a motion made by Dan and a second by Sarah. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, then we'll move along. All in favor? Looks unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. It'll help us get our job done. Thank you.
We are up to 18-19 budget. I was just looking at the time. Mr. Dowd, you're back?
I am back, Madam Chair.
We have this.
If I may ask, is your purpose in looking at the clock with some awe that we're ahead of schedule?
I'm sorry?
You in awe that we're ahead of schedule?
We're-
I'd love to keep it that way. So,
Let's go.
All right. So you have in front of you a budget status report, and I have a couple things to discuss tonight, and I also have our year-to-date financials through May as well. So I can discuss with you, if you'd like, now, budget status, or just more, let me distribute these reports to you, because this is what we've been doing, and we can probably have a little bit better of a discussion of how things should go here on the agenda. So we have a couple things here on the agenda for the evening, and the first is to talk about the 18-19 budget. And as we're approaching and as we're getting closer to having next year set up, the next school year set up, and next fiscal year set up, we're doing a much better job being able to identify where and how where we need funds in the budget and what it's going to look like. So I think we're in good shape in that regard. Part of that discussion is that my hope that we'll be able to have all of our ducks in a row and have a budget presented, the board will be able to take a vote on for next year. So you have the right, you have the ability to do a transfer from the default budget, and I'll say default budget, that was voted in. That default budget becomes the operating budget as line by line and that sort of thing. The nature of the default budget itself does not presuppose that everything's going to be where it needs to be. So you as a board have the right to do reallocation, if you will, of the budget. However, as we're getting closer to the beginning of the year, to me, it would make more sense to do that reallocation in one fell swoop. Take a look. That way there we can have a budget that we can consider at least a working budget into the new year. We can say, hey, at this point, this is what we had. We're not doing these drab budget transfers. So, on the agenda for a little later on are some, I think next on the agenda actually, are some project list and projected end-of-year financials. And part of working toward getting that budget in place is to have an idea as to where the board is with some of these projects and how that reallocation is going to look. So if you have any questions now, I'm happy to address them. That's where things are. I would like to have talk to you about the projected year-end financials and the budget status report, if it would be helpful. And if it would be helpful as well, Tom Gary is here to speak about some summer projects as well. And I get the feeling that they're tied together here. So I will move on. If you have your budget status report in front of you, it should be part of the packet. You'll see where we're at from a budgetary perspective, what our original budget was, budgetary perspective, and the total appropriations at the bottom, excluding fund transfers. Fund transfers are met typically on a dollar for dollar basis. We budget those expenditures in the general fund, revenue in the general fund, and typically they're revenue and expense neutral. So I've excluded those to get a real picture of what the appropriations picture looks like and what the actual year-to-date or actual anticipated, based on year-to-date, will look like as we approach the end of the year. This is broken out on an object level, so you'll see salaries, benefits, professional services. You'll see the fund transfers next, then the total appropriations. You'll see revenue and credit variances, which include our prior year surplus, the reserve for encumbrances, both budget and actual, and then local, state, federal revenue, and the town assessments, to really give a good overall view, including revenue, the picture of where we're going to be at, in theory, if things stay on track, toward the end of the year. And you'll see that from an expenditure perspective, we're running at about a $533,000 favorable variance. You can see on the various lines, salaries, benefits, where some of that surplus is coming from and where we've overspent or where we're in line to overspend. Bear in mind, this is not at a functional level, so these figures look a little different when they're put into a functional level. Initially, looking at the report, you'll note that salaries are showing a variance, an unfavorable variance of $39,584, and I know that there'll be some questions on that, and I'll address that. The way that the budget was set up is that when employees retire or depart or separate from the district, those expenditures relating to their departure, any time that they've cashed in, any retirement incentive, has to simply come out of that salaries line. I would like to budget that a little bit differently in the future. I think we're understanding that a little bit better, and that's where it's been budgeted, if you will, and that's where it's coming out of. So overall, we actually still have retirements or departures coming in as we speak. So I've really just based this on my best information, the best knowledge. You'll see the benefits at 126, 835 favorable. That probably better reflects staffing levels, benefits levels more accurately. Going down, you'll see professional services favorable, books, info, access fees favorable, 150,000. Out of district tuition, vocational tuition, so far it looks like we're heavily overspent in that object at $263,487. It looks like we will be around that level at the end of the year. Unfortunately, I don't know 3 weeks. I don't know what's going to come up in 3 weeks. And the only good thing is that if we do receive a placement in the next 3 weeks, it's going to be for a very short period of time. Transportation is in line. Supplies, we've tried to be conservative, knowing that we had that overage. Utilities, equipment. So next, if you look at the equipment line and the building and site major maintenance and renovations, there have been questions as to what we have for capital and what we have for operating surplus. And the way that the equipment and building lines are set up, those are pretty much where you're going to see your capital expenditures, your capital budget, your capital expenditures, and your capital variance. So showing for equipment 104,000, sites and building and site and major maintenance and renovations 87,000. So the total there is approximately 533,000 favorable. See your fund transfers, again, it doesn't matter really what the revenue and what the expenses are. They're budget neutral, surplus neutral. If you go down, you'll see where we are from where we had budgeted the surplus, actual to the variance. You'll see a reserve for encumbrances, what we had budgeted. Actual audit had made a few adjustments on the encumbrances, so you'll see that those two lines flip. Revenue, you'll see local revenue and some aspects of that have shifted a little bit. And state revenue, obviously, we've been the beneficiaries of some funding for some projects that we've done, as well as some unanticipated aid, I want to say retroactive adequacy aid. It's a fine point, and I don't know that anyone here cares, but you're all representatives from a town, even though you're members of this board. And typically in the past, what has happened is when when the Department of Education has realized or recognized that there has been an underfunding due to a miscalculation or something that has happened in the past, they will fund that. The legislature will authorize funding of that. In the subsequent year, when tax rates are set, these funds are expected to roll forward, if you will, and that's netted out against the town for which it's attributable. So it doesn't just get lost. If your town is a town that received a greater amount than another town, your town would get credited on your apportionment. So that's where you'll see that. So essentially, they don't wait, they distribute it, but really it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's meant to roll into surplus because we're looking at those funds in the following year as part of that apportionment and to be able to get that money credited back to the towns. Incredibly confusing when you have it happening, which we've had. I can't complain. We've had that happen, I think, over the past 3 years. We've had just a small adjustment, but it's for this town or that town. It's for Sandown, not Atkinson, or it's for 3 towns in different amounts, and it happens. So anyway, that's a little bit of insight into that. Town assessments, state, federal revenue, all pretty much in line, looking good, favorable. You'll see the net, 663,000. Assigned fund balance, which is the amount that we would reserve this year for next year's encumbrances, estimated at 100,000, and a change in non-spendable fund balance, which can be prepaids or inventories, I've estimated at 25,000 just to be conservative, leaving us with a proposed or perhaps an estimated balance in surplus, if you will, of $538,126. So we still have, even though we're getting close to the end of the year, we still have a number of factors that will come into play as we begin to wind down and close the books. So I can address any questions you have on that, and I am more than happy to if you wanted to tie this into the project list.
Yeah, could we hear everything? And then, because I think some of our questions may involve projects, and answer them after we've heard the projects. Is that all right with everybody? Hear it all and then come back, double back to questions if you've got them and they didn't get answered through the proposals, the presentations. Are we all right with that?
I'll have Mr. Geary join us then, if that's okay. You should have in front of you a colorful facilities projects list, which Mr. Geary will be happy to discuss.
Go again. If everybody has it in front of them, I can start just right at the top and run down the list of projects. And also you'll find, actually I should go over the columns, right? So the first one is a project code that we'll use in our financial system to track all the expenses associated with each project. Next one is a location, which is obvious. Project title, estimated costs to date, CIP ID if it applies to the capital improvement plan. Classification that I use in the project management software to determine which bucket it falls into when it comes to classification of the project. Account number, you'll see two accounts. 4,600 is the building improvement account. 4,200 is the site improvement account. And then you have a fiscal year column, which describes whether we're going to take it out of this year's funding or next year's funding. And then you see notes. So starting at the top, tied to the capital improvement plan, you have the middle school, the section P of the roof design work, okay? With a project like this, we involve with the building envelope, we would require architectural services to design the roof that we would install. Going down, we have the Timberlane Regional Performing Arts Center, the outside wall siding project that I've discussed earlier this year. I have a budget number of $45,000 for architectural services for that project, so we can have bid documents and proper design. So I'm not back here in 10 years asking for another go-around at it. Again, another roof replacement at the Atkinson Academy, $15,000 there for the design. Sandown Central signage, that was a CIP project in the amount of $10,000. Replacing the courtyard window and wall system was a project that was supposed to begin this year, this past year that we're in now. But the facilities committee had used the funding to fund the Pollard boiler that had failed over the winter. And I think it's a good chance for us to kind of take a step back and say that this is involved in the building envelope and maybe we should have some design services involved with that if it's going to be a long-term fix. Two science lab updates at the high school. A lot of the cabinetry and fixtures have fallen into disrepair. This is part of the capital improvement plan. We did 2 last year. This would finish them out by doing the other 2. Locker replacement phase 4, the final phase, at the middle school, also a CIP project. Then we come down to paving the walkway from the rear gym to the football stadium entrance for safe passage. A lot of kids use it, and if anybody takes a drive by, you can see the wear path and how much the students use it. This will allow us to put in a safe walkway and properly maintain it. The next block you'll see are main entry security improvements, which I'm not going to dive into detail in a public session. This is also has a revenue offset with state grant funding that we were awarded for applying earlier this year. At the Pollard School, we have in the basement, years ago there was asbestos tile and asbestos mastic, which is the adhesive that holds the tile to the cement floor. We have found that we need to go ahead and remove that mastic because at one time that basement was unoccupied. Now it's been occupied for years for storage, custodial office, so we don't want any release of any asbestos fibers in there, so that would be to abate that area. Again, at the Pollard and Sandown North and Sandown Central, we have main entry security improvements, and like I said before, I can dive into that in public session. Timberlane Regional High School, we have tree removal by garage. If you notice outside, there's a lot of tall pines, very weak. Our utility company has said for years, year after year, you guys probably want to remove that. Our transmission line that runs to the building is underneath those trees.
We're losing 1 or 2 of those a year anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, we do, find limbs on the garage, vehicles, things like that. So also with removing that, we would try to put in some processed gravel to free up some extra parking for our maintenance vehicles, which then in turn frees up parking for staff and students. So if we can gain even a couple, we all know the parking issues on the campus. Access control, we have a couple doors that we want to put fobs on for easier access. For emergencies, if we have to do a reverse evacuation and get the kids into the building fast, rather than send somebody around, if somebody doesn't have a key on them, to the front door and have them buzzed in, this will allow who's ever on staff to badge in. Again, we have more asbestos removal at the middle school, which involves flooring, cove base, and cabinets that are attached to the wall. Sandown North, as a result of our facilities and safety committee meetings, it's been a noted deficiency at the Sandown North School that the new parking area doesn't have adequate lighting. So we would look at installing 2 light poles to properly light that area for safety reasons. The high school, we'd like to continue the exterior painting that was begun. And if you notice in the front of the building, gone to more of a neutral color and tried to phase out the teal green border around the building. I think it was well received by the Timberlane community, so we'd look at carrying that around the building. And finally on the list, and it's last, it's also highlighted, and I'll tell you why. We found 2 weeks ago tomorrow, that we're having some issues with our drain field and our septic system. It was observed during routine checkups on the fields that we had water that was exiting one of the vent pipes. We immediately called a contractor to come over. Thankfully, Busby Construction took people off of jobs that they had, were able to come over and assess, get an excavator on site to do some exploratory work. In conjunction with that, we also notified the building department in Plastow to make sure they were aware of it, and also the engineer that designed the system back in 2009, right? So it's a fairly new system. What we have found is that environmental field number 3, so there's 3 fields that we're dumping water to. It's not draining as it should be, and the engineer confirmed that. Busby Construction confirmed that, and we actually got a second opinion that another engineer that confirmed that as well. So we do have some options with that drain field. Originally, I was thinking that, oh gosh, we're going to be up around the $200,000-$300,000 range, and there goes all of the summer projects and all the planning I've done for the past few months. But we have some options in front of us, and I think that $95,000 is adequate to address the issues. Back when they were installed in 2009, state approved 5 total fields, even though we put in 3. So 5, the other 2 were for future use, if we were to expand the building or something like that. So our recommendation would be to put in that 4th field, also install valves to be able to isolate field 3 so we can get it to rejuvenate. And the engineers and experts are confident that it will rejuvenate. But this 4th not only gives us room for expansion in the future, it also gives us a fallback in case number 3 doesn't rejuvenate, because 2 fields cannot handle the load that we have with the building. We're exceptionally proud this year of our seniors because they left right on time, right in time for us. Where the demand is, we're okay for now as we have field number 3 blocked up. But as we have a full house come the fall, we're going to need that 3rd field. So if you can take a look, I've broken it down into FY18 and FY19 projects. So FY18, we'd be looking at using the balance in the building improvement and site improvement accounts. And FY19 would be the remaining. I have the drain field highlighted because it really wasn't part of my plan 3 weeks ago to be dealing with the septic system. But here we are, we have an attached cost to rectify it, and hoping to settle that tonight.
So a couple notes on the septic system. When we did have the overflow, it was gray water. It was not any other solid or semi-solid refuse, and it is not an area that was impacting the fields. It apparently dissipated on its own, so the situation was not certainly as bad as it could have been. The matter was addressed, and I think that although that might be a sign of failure or an indication of failure, I don't think that it necessarily means that the system is in failure. But if we've got a system that is in any way overburdened or could be overburdened based on its use, where we have the system all ready to expand, to allow that first field to recover, to add additional fields would probably be helpful. And if we have any questions on that, Gary Paradis is here and can certainly address any of the technical questions that you may have.
Gary Paradis is also, he's our district plumber. We're very happy to have him part of the team. He's really got out in front of this and helped somebody who spent a lot of time in Massachusetts learn all about septic systems. So I appreciate his help and guidance on the project. So if there are any technical questions.
Gary, why don't you come up and join us? Sean, a technical question.
Yes. So let me, so I understand this field, how many, well, the septic system has what, 3 fields that are active and one of them has failed. But the design of this septic system has the ability to have 5 fields for disbursement, of which 2 that we didn't decide to put in at the time. Is that how it worked?
When they designed the system, they designed it for 3 fields and an expansion of 2 more fields if you go above a usage of water, which we're right on that threshold.
Okay.
And that's readings that have been taking place over the past week when we haven't had a full house. So going back to when seniors were here all the time, we don't know what that usage was. We're assuming it's more. So for that amount of water, that field is not handling it.
Jen and then Kim.
Do we know what caused that failure in less than 10 years?
I don't think we want to even use the term failure, right? Because our engineer is saying that it's not a complete failure, right?
Correct. It has to rejuvenate. And then
Correct.
pretty much shutting the field down for an amount of time, letting it rejuvenate, and then opening it back up.
So it's saturated.
It is saturated. That's why that water
Needs
was.
a chance to rest.
Yep.
One of the, I shouldn't say one, but as part of the proposal, there are valves that would be installed.
Correct.
As well as some monitoring, so we can understand if one field is being burdened unreasonably.
Correct.
And we can make adjustments accordingly, and that may very well be the case is what happened here. The other 2 fields seemed okay.
They did.
So I can speak on that a little bit. So part of that 95,000, right, is installing field number 4, and also installing isolation valves. So if we need to shut off a field, we're able to divert the water to another one, right? Right now, we don't have that option. We would also we have building management systems throughout the district. We would be putting water and wastewater meters that would tie into our BMS, so we'd be able to go back and track if we had an anomaly on the water usage, which I think is good data to have.
Kim?
Also recommended by our engineer.
Well, that was my question, is why don't you have that already? I mean, typically, that's what you'd have, because it sounds like you don't know why Field 3 is overburdened, right? Because you don't know how your discharge, I did wastewater engineering, you don't know how your discharge is coming into those fields, and it might be all coming, are they sequential, or are they each one discrete?
What it does is the two pump systems that we have in the back of the high school pump
Yep.
into one distribution chamber.
Okay, so there's one D box,
Yep.
and then from there?
And then from there, those 3 pipes go out to the leach fields, which have their own individual D boxes. So you're talking 4 pipes going out, what's the vent? 3 pipes going out, 1 to each field.
Mhm.
And then they have 18 rows, 90 feet long each.
So there's gonna be something, and each field was put in at the same time with the same parameters?
Correct.
There's something going on.
And I think if you want to talk about the levelers too.
Upon further investigation with a separate company, they had suggested putting levelers in the upper distribution box before they go out to the fields. So possibly one of these fields is getting more water, but they can't determine that until they pump the tank down.
You would want it to be equally distributed.
Correct.
If it's getting
Correct.
diverted, 80% is going into zone 3, let's say.
Correct.
And the rest of it, that would be a problem.
That's exactly what's happening, right?
I believe that, personally, I believe that's what's happening, because you have 3 fields was installed at the same time, so.
Any other questions? Brian?
Well, actually, I have a question on, not on the septic. Looking at the overall list here. It's like $90,000 for design work on all those things, and apparently that's where we live in today, that everything goes, you're designing repairs, because I just see the town of Acton just went through this, with their firehouse. So after this design work is done, then this gets put into next year's budget, or becomes a warrant article? Because I can just imagine the money we're talking about if the design work is $90,000. So that's, and the other thing is, on your tree removal, is because you're on private property, because I know that if there are trees that are disturbing power lines in the streets, you call up the power company, and they take care of it. So is the problem because it's on timberland property?
Yeah, I tried that route.
I mean,
my first option would be to go to the power company and say, can you help us out? But it does follow the whole line, the whole property line right there is the pines. Much too far for the utility company to come in to cut them down.
Because theoretically, if the limb fell on the power line,
Yeah.
they would have to come in and repair it.
Correct, but we would have to cancel school. Yeah, so I think of things differently like that, right? So
You'd still be responsible to remove the tree, though.
Yeah, it'd be R3.
You wouldn't repair the line. The utility company repairs the line, but you are responsible to remove the tree because it's happened twice at mine. I have to get the tree out of there.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Unitil? Yep. Take
I
care of
haven't
the
had
tree.
that experience.
You take care of the
They'll get
tree.
off the line, and that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, they'll come and disconnect the power and go, let us know when the tree's out of the
When
way.
the tree gets down, yeah.
So,
We actually ran into this, I think in the fall, if I'm not mistaken. Dean would probably know a little bit better. We actually lost our cable.
Comcast, yeah.
It was one of the last poles there toward the end, and it took out our Comcast line, and we were without connection in our field house, in the press box.
So back to my first question then, is that when the, after the design work gets done,
Rebasing it.
is that plan to become like warrant article, or gets part of next year's budget, or what do you envision there?
I would defer back to the board on the warrant article question.
I mean, that's just what I'm thinking. I'm looking at $90,000 of design work, and in my brain, I'm saying, well, if the design work's $90,000, is the actual work gonna be $500,000?
I can say that in the CIP, we had a lot of these scopes broken out. So the roof, we were looking at it was about 120,000 per roof. The pack, I think I presented ballpark figures of what the architect was thinking of specifying with a standing seam metal solution. And that was up in the $300,000 range.
Dan, Kim, then.
So,
then
Brian, I don't know if you remember or not, but when they do the design, they come back to us, and then we'll decide. So it doesn't just automatically get put in. It may get put in the CIP, but it still comes back to us. It doesn't just get put in the budget.
I understand. I'm just trying to think ahead here. That's all. It's.
I see what you're saying. You're saying that the design work's going to equal $500,000 worth of work next year.
Well, I mean, as a contractor, you know, and I granted that each one of these is different. I'm watching the town of Atkinson going through this, and they're okay. If you took that money and you repaired the siding, I'm not really sure what you're spending half the money doing design work, and there's the building right there. If you get a guy that knows what they're doing, staff knows what they're doing, they just take that money and do it.
They just do it. So
but
you're
it depends
saying
what the function is.
So you're saying,
I just see a lot of design. You know.
do we really need the design to replace a roof on Atkinson Academy?
That's
and I would
basically-
say I don't know unless we're planning on changing the roof, right?
Yeah,
If we're going to a
that's
different.
that's overall my concern. But I do
I
think.
see what you're saying.
But I do. As I see it, it's in Atkinson, and it just seems to. And I was at the Boxford Town Hall last night, and they're doing something at their there was a design there to replace windows at one of their schools, and you know, it's interesting.
You had an answer, I think, maybe. Did you have something else?
Yeah, I did. So, I mean, to speak to the point about changing materials, we would be on both roofs. They're both ballasted roofs with tar and gravel. We'd be going to PVC or a TPO roof. But I think that having a designer come in gives us really good documents and to really define the scope and properly bid and get a product that's going to last long term. We have stamp drawings, and that we all know that stamp isn't cheap. We're looking at it, but that also provides us less risk with a good defined scope.
Less risk.
Less risk for us.
I think that's what we had when we did the pack. I think those are stamp drawings.
Yeah, and
that didn't work out
well.
Kim, one?
Yeah, I agree with Brian on some of this. I do not remember all this design work in the CIP, and I'm hoping we're going to have the CIP up and running to kind of refresh us pretty soon on this, because I honestly don't remember. I have a question regarding the asbestos. Is that encapsulated? Is the asbestos encapsulated? I'm asking the asbestos. Is it
The asbestos
encapsulated?
at the middle school, at which school? Because we have it at many, so.
At Pollard, right here, the one that you're mentioning, is that encapsulated?
It is, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. It is not encapsulated, but it's a low risk to release. You have to pulverize or grind it for a release of the fiber.
So it would be considered encapsulated. So it's
No,
not
that's not the
considered,
term, but yeah.
it's not considered an
It's not
imminent
considered
safety
friable.
risk. It's not
Correct. It's
friable.
non-friable.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
so to say that it's fine as long as it's in place, as long as you don't touch it and start to do anything. I'm just looking at prioritizing. That has to do with my
Right.
question.
So I look at it as, it's friable if somebody drags a filing cabinet across the floor and disturbs the mastic that's on the floor.
Well, yes, but
If you're tiptoeing around the basement, it's not friable. However,
if you walk on it, it's not friable.
If you walk on it, it's not friable, but if a
Correct.
chair is dragged
Okay.
across, that's a potential for a
Right.
release, and
Right.
I wouldn't be coming if I didn't think it was a high priority. Because we have it in many of our buildings, right? So there's items that we should act on, and then there's items that we responsibly take care of and maintain.
So why did you just pick Pollard then, if we have
These
it
were
in
the
many of
two
our
that came
buildings
to
and
the-
it's
So
a priority?
we recently had an audit from EPA and DES on our asbestos management plans. And part of that, and that happens every 3 to 5 years, where they'll pick a school in a district, come out and take a look. Pollard was selected, and the person from DES suggested that we act on that immediately. So we brought in our environmental consultant. He agreed that it is time for abatement of the basement.
Okay, so the only reason we're looking at Pollard right now is Pollard was looked at by somebody else, but that's not to say that other schools don't have it. So my question is, if Danville has it, then why am I not looking at Danville too?
Because I did an inspection at Danville?
Okay.
And I'm the designated person by the local ed authority for asbestos. I did an inspection of Danville, and we don't have any actionable items.
And you thought Danville was fine? And there's,
And our consultant too, yeah.
okay, so you're confusing me here. So we have it in other areas, but it's all fine except for Pollard.
Correct. The way HERA, the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, which is federal, I'm sure you're aware, is we do not have to remove unless it is disturbed or potential for disturbance. And we found that that was a potential for a disturbance, along with work that we had planned at the middle school, so that's why we're abating it. HERA also states is that you should come up with a plan to start removing as you go, and be proactive in the approach about removing asbestos.
So are we gonna have a plan for all the buildings that have asbestos
Yeah,
then?
we do have a plan.
We do have a plan.
I'd be happy to sit down with you and
Okay.
show us our plans. I mean, we have really solid.
I don't think this board was aware that we had, I mean, because it's.
Safety committee was.
Well, I guess the CIP
But
committee.
it's by
or-
law that we have to. And it's also posted on our website, where, on each school has a parent tab where the notice is posted that there are asbestos-containing materials.
Right.
And the plans are available upon request.
Okay,
Dan?
it's fine. I just hadn't heard, and it's not in the CIP, so.
I'm not positive of this, but maybe you will know. Didn't we just recently start using the basement in Pollard more so than we had in the past?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a change of use.
Right, change of use, absolutely. Before it was just storage, now we're actually
They've used it more.
using it.
Custodial-
Not for
custodial-
students, but
No, but it's a custodial workspace.
that's what I mean.
Things like that, yeah.
It's active now. Before it was only active when they had to like get something. Now it's
Correct.
active.
In our plans, it was listed as an unoccupied space. So now we have a workspace down there.
It's a workspace.
Right. Okay.
Jen?
That's what I thought.
So the $95,000 for the septic is gonna come off of that 533.
Well, it could. It could. So,
Is that what you're looking to do?
well, so let me frame it up a little bit as to where we're at. We have the two capital accounts that I pointed out will likely have surplus balances. The equipment, so we'll start with this year, the equipment and the building, so 104 and 87, right? And in next year, in next year's budget, we have money allocated to capital, $500,000 in the 4600 account. So that's the picture, and that's why if you look at the project lists, we have a list here, and it's identified as to what could be an 18 item, what could be a 19 item. If you look at the total on the capital for this year, about 190,000, maybe it could be a little less, depending on if we have anything else come up. And as far as next year's budget goes, you know, if you look at this list, we have 268,000 identified. We have 89,000 potentially identified for this year. That leaves the 95,000 out there. So really, it could be something that could come out of this year's budget if we were to go in that direction. Could be something that could come out of next year's budget if we
So
were to go in that
let me
direction.
see if I can clarify this, so that, look, using these numbers, we'd have 89,700 that we could take out of the equipment and building site maintenance and take care of the 18 projects. We also have enough money to squeak out this $95,000 project
Correct.
out of this year, out of this current year. And then in the 19 budget, which you're saying there's already 500,000 in capital, you're saying you've got 268 in projects there that would come
Correct.
out. Does that clear it up at all? Does it make it
So,
even more difficult?
well, so are we no longer concerned about being short money in the 18-19 budget?
In the 18-19 budget?
Capital was never an issue.
No, capital was 500,000.
Well, at one point, there was some discussion about what to do with that capital.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, so we feel like we're in good shape with the
Yeah, we
budget
really
that we have.
we really had nothing. I shouldn't say we didn't have anything, but we had some things budgeted, but nothing to fill the 500,000. Ironically, I was somewhat insistent to make sure that we did have something in capital
Sure.
Yeah, I
Just,
remember.
well, just in the event of a septic failure, and, you know, when I heard of an overflow situation, of course, I thought the worst. And I believe, Brian, when we were speaking at the last meeting, I estimated about 100,000 perhaps in excess in the capital between the two accounts, or between all the capital functions. So you look at what we have lined up, look at the potential for needing to address the septic, you know, could be at about 100,000 available, so.
Succinct answers. I want
Can I do it?
succinct answers. Give it a shot.
Yeah, I don't think you're capturing the spirit of the question. You know, we're making it work. So you're talking everything, the whole budget, right? The number.
Right, because
Yeah.
we keep saying, we're short, we don't have enough, we don't have enough.
Well, you're not saying that
And
tonight.
Well, no,
Well,
no, wait.
No, but that has been the discussion, so
Yeah,
now we're hearing there's an unexpected, $95,000, and if the money's there to do it
in the
this
18
year,
budget.
then maybe that might, I'm just trying to decide in my head what might be the wiser route to go. Because if we do it next year and then something happens next year, then what? What if what if we have a problem with one of the boilers, right? I mean, then what?
That's why we should do it this year.
So
So that's just, that's why I was asking.
Leach field, I'd rather get it done sooner than later.
Sarah, then Sean, then Kim.
Back to the fields. How long will it take that third field to rest, to rejuvenate? Because if we're looking at, even with having having the water distributed evenly between fields 1, 2, and 4, 3 fields still seems to be, at its max capacity. So how long will it take for us to then have 4 fields?
They're recommending 7 to 12 days to.
Oh, okay, so
yeah,
it's really very,
not-
very
it's not
short
a
term.
lengthy period of time. It's-
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure
Fairly
how
quickly.
long that was gonna take,
We have
so.
some things in our benefit too, is that we have the students that are leaving soon,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we also have the warm summer months that are gonna
Yep.
help us
Yeah.
with that as well, so.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that long-term, we would then have enough fields for, growing population and stuff, so, all right, cool.
I think it was, let's see, Sarah, Sean, Kim, Brian.
Okay. Just to follow up on Sarah's point there with the fourth field, what was the cost added if we went to the full design of a fifth field on there? I mean, I would figure that since you had equipment there, I know it would be added beyond the 95 grand, but, is it, it's not double that to get it done.
They had said the same amount for field 5, I believe.
Yeah, I wanna say, the cost of 4 is the same as 5, right, so probably in the $60,000 range.
I don't know if I know what the breakdown of the 95 is.
Should I break down the 95 further? What does that?
I would just
does-
do
no, I mean,
more of
does
a
that
cost,
help,
because,
or-
let's say, for example, it only costs us,
Exactly.
I'll just pull out a number out here, for example, 25 grand, since they have the equipment there, and all you're paying for is the labor on site and the raw materials, you've already got everything there, it might behoove us as a board to do the fifth field for an extra 25 grand in my,
Yeah, so we have the field, the ballpark pricing we have now is about 66,000 per field to install.
okay.
The other 30,000-ish would be for installing valves, the levelers, and also metering tied into the building management system.
All right, and then my other follow-up question that I had was, in regards to all these projects that are fiscal year 18, you got roughly 3 weeks, to get signed, executed contracts on them. Where do you stand on all these projects relative to that if we decide to move forward?
Should probably, I can definitely meet the deadline of June 30th, no problem. Probably sometime next week to have contracts executed and purchase orders sent out.
Okay.
And that goes for anything, so.
Yeah, all the things in the CIP, you've had in the hopper, so.
No, it's more like if we decide to, if it's gonna be an 18 project, that you have to have a
Needs to be
signed, executed
encumbered.
contract before June 31st, or else it moves into fiscal year 19.
Yeah, you can do the work but
19,
you need to
but you
have
have to have the.
I know,
yep.
you need to have the encumbered and something in hand. Kim, Brian, Danny.
So going back to capital money in this year's budget, and looking at what you listed here under your appropriations variances and totaling it up, it's about 1.7 million. Typically, we see close to 3 million apportioned to the towns as EPV. So this isn't the total amount of capital. These are just major. So none of the other lines have any excess capital of the $3 million that we typically see apportioned as capital expenses?
A majority of what you would see that's not captured here is gonna be in the bond payment, and that's level. We know what that is. So that matches budget.
Okay, that makes sense.
Brian?
I just wanted to point out, and Mr. Paris can confirm this, but I think the leach bed isn't functioning properly right now. So this isn't really functioning, it's a 3-field bed. It's really functioning like a 1-field bed. And so if you, when it's properly leveled up, I don't think you're gonna need this 5th, because obviously that thing was designed.
When it was designed.
It was designed, it wasn't
designed-
like it was designed 100 years ago.
Right, but when they designed it for X amount of gallons.
Mhm.
And we're right on that cusp, we're right
But you're
there.
adding one, though. So you're gonna be adding a bed.
Right.
You're gonna be
Adding
adding
a
a
field.
bed.
You're gonna be adding a field, so,
Correct.
and then you're also gonna be putting something in to level it out, so I gotta think, that especially this time of year, that's gonna help quite a bit. I guess I'm saying, I don't really think you're gonna need that 5th field.
Need another
That's all.
66,000?
That's all.
Probably the two fields are it's almost brand new if
Well-
Field 3's been seeing all the use.
Could have been something could have shifted right in the earth that could have, like nothing, you know.
Could be
Danny?
in fact.
And Jim?
What about the track? Happy to report out. Last time I spoke about this, I have looked in, I have good solid pricing. So we're looking at a turnkey solution of $300,000 to $325,000 to install a new track.
Now, is that
That
some,
includes, I'm sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt,
No,
but-
go ahead.
Sorry. That includes fresh coat of asphalt, reworking the pole vault areas, high jump areas, and also resurfacing with a polyurethane surface, which is a longer-term solution than the rubber surface.
So would that mean we're gonna get pole vaulting back?
He's not in charge of pole vaulting.
If we build it,
You
it
can
may
find
come
for
back.
NFL.
No,
but I mean-
not your expertise, you're not the pole vault.
No, but
No, but there
in,
was a-
in spending time with
Lost
Mr.
that piece,
Fantasia, in order to host a proper invitational,
Right,
you know,
we didn't have a pit, right.
we didn't have the pit, so that would also.
Are we still talking 6 lanes or 8 lanes?
We're talking about the same amount that we have now.
6 lanes there now.
6. Jen, you had another question, you had a question and then back to Dan?
I did. I was just curious about the science lab updates, what that would include in those classrooms.
I think in the capital improvement plan, that included replacing cabinetry, flooring repairs and painting.
Countertops.
The countertops,
Electricals?
I don't believe the countertops were touched in the last rendition.
Electricals.
I was in there for open house. What about the ceiling tiles?
I would look at doing this project complete, so if there were ceiling tiles that needed to be replaced, we have the skills in-house to be able to do so.
Yeah, that was cabinetry, I'm thinking back, you have to.
But it's more
always-
cabinetry and any other repairs that come
Yeah.
from replacing the cabinetry, whether it be
Electrical
flooring,
outlet over
painting,
here,
any data or electrical.
yeah, data ports for those lab rooms. So this is the second phase of those rooms that they'd been doing, they'd been in the CIP. Dan, you had another question, then back to Kim?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Back to Kim then.
So, Dan mentioned the track, and now I'm thinking of other things that have kind of reared their ugly head here, and one of them were boilers that we just had a discussion about. I know we're replacing some, but we have others that are clearly towards the end stage of life, and we could see, say, a catastrophic failure in one of those. If we look to spend $268,000 or approve this right now, we're gonna be in trouble should we need a boiler come. I'm just putting it out to the board that I would not be in favor of funding all these projects, because we've only got about $500,000 in capital, and a boiler could set us back.
As I said,
Boiler
over
or
the
two.
summer during our preventive maintenance, we would be inspecting all the boilers, but upon first look, do we have any that are end of life right now?
I haven't seen anything that's gonna raise a red flag. Right, yeah.
And I think some of the older boilers too are sectional boilers, so much like Atkinson, where we thought the boiler failed, right? We were able to get away with a $10,000 to $12,000 fix to replace a cast iron section. I think the problem with the Pollard boiler is that parts weren't readily available. That was at its end of life, and we needed to replace with a new boiler.
Danny?
If I felt we needed one, I would come to you and ask for a
The
boiler.
facilities committee actually requested that we have our plumber go through and evaluate, and they're gonna put together something for us to let us know about all of the heating at all of the buildings, and so.
Because I remember we talked
Right.
about, because we'd want to
We
make
wanna
sure
make
it's
sure, we
CIP'd
wanna
if
know
we
where we're
need
at
to,
and-
where we're at, and that it goes through the process properly.
Yep.
That we can plan for it. I know we've got things that we can't plan for, but. Jen, back to you.
The Sandown Central signage, what's there now? And what is that gonna look like?
Right now is a regular letter board, as you'd see at the other schools, but it's fallen into such disrepair. I know Principal Marino has a really hard time getting their messages out there. If you were to drive by and see it, it's taken a beating. It's at the end of its life.
It's been pushed along the CIP too. It was moved over, and now I think a good strong wind or using your finger like this would just topple it over, so.
And in addition to that, we'd also put it in a more prominent spot. Right now, it's buried
moved it.
kind of behind the pine trees. This would define the entrance, which is important to do, especially for,
Where does the track fit into all of this?
well, it's not on my sheet.
I see.
So, I don't know. It wasn't the $325,000 was not planned for, and I think it rapidly deteriorated, and as I reported the last time,
So if we wanna have track there next year,
meets, yeah.
Danny?
So for me, the track fits into this number. And if we are gonna do it for next year, Mr. Gary's gonna have to be able to get some signed contracts before our next meeting for us to decide whether we can do that or not.
It doesn't.
For the track, no,
Doesn't.
because that would be in the next fiscal year's budget.
Not if we encumber it.
You don't have enough
No,
money.
no, you don't have enough money in this
You
year's
have
budget.
232 left, correct?
Yeah, you
If
can't
you
do
do
it
everything,
in
you'd have
this year's budget.
$232,000 left. Is that right?
the 95
Yeah.
and all these other 18s.
If you did
If
19.
you did everything.
And 89, you don't have enough in the, if this number holds, to do it.
Right, if you take 268 out of the 500 for 19.
Right.
Oh, that 232 for next year. You wouldn't have enough money next year. Is the suggestion
wouldn't
to
have
take it
enough-
over this
You
year?
don't have money this year. You only- I thought-
No, you don't, either year.
Right.
We don't have enough money either year, right, period.
Perfect. I mean, not
The
perfect,
track
but
is- the
that's
track
a
is not getting done.
clarified statement. You don't have money either year to do it, unless you come up with some other way to do it.
Can I, may I, Madam Chair? I did, knowing the track was gonna come up as a question, I did talk to our contractors that, I've been working with. There's two phases to this project. One is to completely strip off the rubber, pulverize, reclaim the asphalt that's there, lay a new fresh coat of asphalt. That has curing time of, 3 to 4 weeks. And then we would come in and lay the top surface down. I just wanted to make you all aware of the process, how it's not just, even if we have a contract, snap of the fingers and it's gonna be done next week. Maybe we take it in 2 phases. It's just,
So you don't have the money.
We don't have the money in this budget or next year.
Did you talk to Paul Busby about that?
I didn't know that I had direction to do.
I thought I asked you.
I reported.
I thought I asked. I thought that came up at the last meeting. People remember that? That came up at the last meeting?
I thought we had a conversation about.
Talking to the company that built it. And
Madam Chair, I do take direction directly from the superintendent of schools. I just want to make that point known.
But if so, to move away from the track that we don't have enough money for in either year, we'd have to come up with some other way to fund that. We could write a warrant article for next year's, but that's gonna lead back to, I'd like to have a strategic plan done, so that we then could hook our strategic plan in with tracks and capital improvement, et cetera. So there are some things now that everything's needs to hinge together to, and a teacher's contract. that will be a warrant article. You've got to look at the big picture, not just small pictures here. Kim, question, comment?
I just want to go back to Brian's point on the track. Do we need a motion to have Mr. Geary speak to Busby's to find out, because there was quite a conversation. There's the bottom of the track and there's the surface of the track. Your pricing is for pretty much everything, but it sounded like, to me at least, that the underlayment was not the issue, that it was the top, and that what Brian wanted to do, because Mr. Busby's here and willing to help, was to have a conversation between Mr. Geary and Mr. Busby. So can we somehow get that done, so we can get a different sort of price? Is it a
to
motion?
direct the superintendent.
To,
Tom, you got more information?
Yes, while I didn't contact Mr. Busby for that, I did have the contractor break out the scope to lay the track surface on a pre-prepared surface, right? So if that was the direction we were going to go, I would write the scope and the bid out that way, and we could put out the paving as a separate bid item, right? So I did have the scope broken out that way too, so if that's an option the board chooses to go. I never have good luck splitting up the bids because there's always finger pointing if something goes wrong. So I
did this
proceeded.
piece and I did it right, but you didn't do this piece right.
Correct. So before even contacting Mr. Busby, I would have preferred to break out the scope and see how much are they carrying for paving. And the bulk of the cost is in the track surfacing.
The bulk of the cost is in the top surface?
Is the track surface, yeah, not the asphalt
Company that
base.
actually does tracks.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does track.
Yeah, I went to Cape and Island Tennis and Track, well-known in the business, do everything from the colleges in Boston to many of the public schools. I think Bedford, New Hampshire did one, Winnicott, many of the schools around here, so.
Just a quick question, if I may.
Sure.
In any of the discussions you had with them, did they mention that it's possible to remove the surface that's bad on the track while not damaging the integrity of the underlayment? I imagine if they are bonded, it might be tough to take one off from the other without damaging it to the point of needing repair.
And that's correct. That was one of the concerns he had, was that's why we wanted to carry, the company wanted to carry a number for providing the base, was because if they have bobcats and they're scraping that rubber off and they damage the asphalt, I mean, then what? So, that's why I lean towards a turnkey solution. I think it protects our risk, as a district, and so we have a, long-term product.
If you put a new surface on an old underlayment and there's a problem again, who owns it?
And it has nothing to do, we have had very good luck with Busby Construction
Oh, yeah,
throughout the
absolutely.
years. They helped us out in a jam with the septic system, they've
Oh, that'd be
provided
great.
us good sub-bases for our parking lots, and the work is phenomenal. I just took a different route with that.
Questions, other comments? Brian?
Well, I guess, no, I don't want to get into a argument debate, but I guess what I've been told, the track isn't as bad as what we're being told, okay? And from people who actually do it. So when you say if the people do it, like the company that's what they do for a living, like Brock's when they came paved, that's who these people are. I mean, all these people who did all the work down there, it's not like they did this on the side. I mean, it's these are people that are highly reputable. And
I am too, and I don't do this as a hobby. I mean, this is what I get paid to do, so, I mean.
You work for Timberlane. To the best of
I
my
work for the
knowledge, you
SAU,
haven't,
yes, yeah.
okay, to the best of my knowledge, you haven't built a track. Am I right about that? Don't confuse working here with the person that, if someone comes in and like builds a building and this kind of stuff, that just because you know, just like, same thing, I'm a general contractor, I don't frame, I don't pretend I'm a frame, I'm not a finished carpenter, you know? I have plumbers work for me, they know a lot more about plumbing than I do, that's their jobs. But I guess I'm personally still not convinced that this track for $300,000 means it's pretty much getting rebuilt. I just find this hard to believe this track is no good. That's all. And that's what I've been told by people.
Dan?
I have 2 questions. Did you have people come out and inspect the track?
Of course I did, I had 3 contractors. That's their specialty is tracks. And
It's
I'm not
tracks.
taking anything away from Brock's or Busby. They install tracks.
Okay.
Can I ask my second question?
Sure.
Jeff, what's stopping me from, or us, the board, is from spending this 538,000?
Well, it would depend on what you'd be, the 533 this year?
Sure.
Well,
Whatever number it is.
sure. We'd want to be careful that if we're spending on capital, for capital items and operating funds for operating. So that would be one. I would also caution the board that we're a big district and we have a lot of contingencies. And Mrs. Silver had a question earlier on the point that we're at, and, you know, is it a money issue or is it no longer a money issue? You'll notice that the balances in these accounts here at the end of the year, typically the funds that are there are much greater than that during the year. We have projects that are set up, but knowing that we could have something come up, any project that we could have started last summer, we may defer, just to make sure that we have funding in place to be able to do that. So there'd be nothing to stop the board necessarily, keep it in the right buckets, but be aware that we do have other obligations that can come up like that.
Kim?
And Dan, are you suggesting that we can only take
Right, capital.
the capital money out of this 533 to use?
Can't take the salary money.
Can't take the $533,000 and use it, what?
What?
Why? Because it's apportioned to the towns differently.
I know, what's stopping us from doing it?
Because it's apportioned to the
That's
towns.
not stopping
different-
us.
Yes, it is.
It may
Yes.
cost towns a little
No,
bit
no,
more
no,
or
no.
less, but
We can't, once the budget is approved, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dowd, we cannot take money that was apportioned under one ADM and switch it to EPV.
I'm not comfortable doing that.
I'm not
He's
either.
not comfortable with that.
okay.
So, we're back to, is everyone clear on where we're at? We've got money to do the 18 projects. We've got money to do the, I'll say, the leach field problem. Now, the track, I don't see money enough to do in either year, the way the budget is set up. Is that, am I clear, summarizing? Is that a summary that's clear?
Can I comment on the track?
Sure.
Yeah, just quickly in terms of, I think this is to Mr. Boyle, to Brian's point about, okay, surfaces that are unsafe to play. So who makes that determination? Well, obviously, you know, the athletic director has to decide at some point, but then there's insurance companies and liabilities and those sorts of things. That's like the next level. Like, for instance, if there was a big hole in right field and we couldn't play baseball, like that, I'm relying on the athletic director to say, we can't play baseball there today. This track thing, it seems like it's getting beyond an athletic director making that decision, that it's, you know, is it Primex? Is it somebody else looking at it to say it's unsafe to have track meets on it? You know, like if there were big cracks in the tennis courts, at some point, the athletic director says, we don't really want to have tennis there because the surface isn't good, or not safe, or what have you, right? So the athletic director makes those determinations because it's about scheduling. But then the next thing, this is like, I think to Brian's point, like, who makes the determination that it's not safe at all and it needs to be replaced? And I think that's the question, right?
Yeah.
And so we're talking to a track company, and I think to Brian's point, I'm kind of editorializing here, that's what they do for business, so, yeah, you need a new track. We do tracks, you need a new track. So, I don't know if I want to ask them, right? So, you know, and is it unsafe? Is it Primex unsafe? Is that the determination that we need to make? Because we're looking at a whole nother season.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm
At
not
least.
saying we can do it today, tomorrow, next, but that's a whole nother track season lost. And maybe even the one after that. So I guess those are some things we gotta take into consideration. But I just don't wanna get mixed up with what the athletic director does versus what is beyond the athletic director, you know? Okay, thanks.
Jen, then Kim?
So I just want to clarify, so from a student perspective, an athletic perspective, so these students will not be losing any track meets per se. They'll be losing the ability to have a home track meet because they can still
Travel.
practice, hurdle, long
That was
jump.
what our athletic director led us to believe when he was here and made his presentation, and when he made it at facilities as well, that he felt it was it was safe for practices but that we would make all our track meets away meets until we got things straightened out.
Just want to make sure that.
Yeah, it's not gonna all of a sudden we're gonna have any track meets.
Can I just, so from a middle school perspective, obviously some middle schools don't have tracks at all. You know, so all their meets are away. It's not ideal. I mean, we love to have home meets. I know we had to have a couple that were canceled, and I'm not sure if they were rescheduled.
I think they were canceled.
Yeah, they didn't get the opportunity, and then they were at the States, right? With
Yeah, there's
missing
a time
Yeah,
problem.
so that's disappointing, in that regard, but.
Oh, well, in every athletic, if I can speak from an athletic point of view, I coached for 20 years here, and there were many games we didn't ever get to make up. And that hurt the kids. But there's a time limit, you know, we can only play till Memorial Day is our time limit. We just couldn't get it all in. So, unfortunately, that happens. Sean?
Isn't this,
Oh, it was Kim next, but.
the track, isn't this condition that props up, it's all weather dependent? I mean, it's basically after it rains and then it subsides.
Sure.
So, I mean, is this something like, you know, hey, the softball or baseball field, it rains, it gets wet, you know, and you got a meet or a game at home, it gets scheduled or
Sure,
canceled?
sometimes that happens.
I think, I remember when he was talking about the unpredictability.
Yeah.
And then the buses and all that, and we're not just talking 2 teams now, we're talking
5 teams.
4 or
going,
5
yeah.
schools all coming to the same place for like a quad meet or a tri-meet or that sort of thing. So I think sometimes it was a beautiful day and it looked like they could have had a track meet, but they got canceled a week in advance because of all the other things that have to go into
Yeah, you
place
say,
with
we
transportation.
could have had the track meet, it's a beautiful day, but we gotta schedule it
So far.
backwards to make sure, because we don't know what the weather's gonna be.
So it's what you're saying, it's just a little different because it just involves more people and transportation.
Kim?
I think I'm gonna make a motion here to direct the superintendent to have somebody from Timberlane speak to both Brock and Busby, who put this track in initially, and just have a conversation with them. I'm not trying to
Putting that
step
in
on
motion.
anybody's toes, but you've got the people to put it in. Talk to them.
Okay.
They work
you
with us.
Make a motion then.
That's
the
my
motion?
motion.
Is there a
I'll second.
I'm sorry, Brian, did you?
I'll second it.
Okay, Brian's, have you got that motion, Mrs.?
Well, I don't know
Belcher.
if she wants to complete it. Motion to direct the superintendent to have someone from Timberlane speak to both Brox and Busby. Do you want to be specific about what
Regarding,
specific.
regarding the track.
Do you wanna make it specific to
Condition of the
Mr.
track.
Gary?
Well, yes, Mr. Geary speak to Brock and Busby regarding the track, the condition of the track.
Okay with that, Brian? That would be
Right.
Mr. Gear. Are we clear on the motion?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Are we talking in terms of, should it be under warranty or, I mean,
Just
Functional,
let them know what the issue is and see if they have any insight, because they're the ones that put it in. That's all. I'm not asking, well, you know, maybe, who knows, maybe they come back and say, oh, yeah, maybe I could do something to fix this. I mean, maybe part of it is like you're saying, it's a drainage issue, I don't know. Maybe you need a swale to divert some water so that you don't have it getting underneath the underlayment. It may be simpler than we think, but they're the ones that put it in. I just don't see any reason not to go to them.
Anybody else? Are we clear on the motion? No, the questions, I'll call for a vote then?
Did we talk to them already?
No.
Oh.
Not on this particular topic.
Okay.
my only concern, is, you know, sometimes people defend their work, you know, so they come out and say, well, that's fine. Well, it's clearly not fine to somebody. I mean, the athletic director doesn't think it's fine. You know,
Right.
I'm not sure what if it's a warranty and we'll fix it, if it's fixable, I don't know, I'm not quite sure.
Well, on the other hand, though, you just said
Yeah, I
track
know.
people want to sell tracks.
I know.
So, I mean, why not talk to both? Talk to the people who want to sell them, talk to the people that put it in. I just,
I mean,
information is power.
for me though, I'd like to talk to, I'm just speaking in general, like, I'd like to speak to somebody that actually does tracks for a living, like, if we're doing a track. I mean, just breaking it up with different groups is, I'm not as comfortable and not surprised that it doesn't necessarily work out perfectly when it's 2 different, you know what I mean? It's not what they do.
I get that too,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you just, if I may, either way, we don't have the money. Over the
So
next,
I'm- right,
so,
that's
so
where I'm
so
s-
to me, I think it'd be, there's no harm in getting this, more information, thank you, to, whether it gets in a warrant article, whatever happens next year. But right now, I'm personally, not comfortable with what I'm hearing, from either side of it, and,
Oh, the track, you mean?
right, so I don't really, and if we were in a position where we had the money, that we could do something in the next 4 to 6 weeks, that'd be great. We can't do that even if we wanted to.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. What are we gonna do when we get the information then?
You'll be able
Is
to
that
move-
gonna hold us up doing the projects that we need to get the money straightened out and get contracts for? Are we gonna hold this up until we get that information? Are we gonna be able to go ahead and get the projects started that are in the 18 budget, that we could do? You know, what are we gonna do with the information once we get it, because we don't have 325,000
I don't think it has
anyway.
anything to do with it. That track has nothing to do with what's on this piece of
Right.
paper.
I don't want it holding up what's on this piece of paper if we
Got
can
nothing to do with it.
possibly help it, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's not even on there.
Well, though, I think you could, we're not compelled to do anything on the 19 budget tonight.
Right.
I mean, you
Correct.
might want to hold till we find out on the 19 part of the budget to see if
But
there
you-
might be, but not on the 18 part,
Right.
because we've got to get that,
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
got to be
that's what I'm
encumbered.
concerned about. I don't want to hold up
Not the
everything else.
18, I wouldn't, no, but the 19 we may want to hold.
Okay.
How much money is there in the 18, but how much money is
Would be available?
for 18?
So if you took the 104 and the 87,
191 rough cut.
Yep.
And the project I got added up was 184.7. Old math skills.
Is there a motion on the floor?
They've got a motion on the floor to direct the superintendent, to direct Mr. Gary to speak to Brox and Busby. So I'd like to take action on that. I was trying to call the question, and I let you speak again, so can we please? We're clear on the motion. All in favor of the motion?
I'll have a conversation.
Information is good.
Okay, so information is good. Now, is there other action we're gonna take on what the gentlemen have presented tonight? Mr. Guide,
The motion to accept or approve or allow Mr. Gary to go forward with all the 2018 projects he has listed here, in addition to the field repair for 95,000, totaling 184,700.
have a second on that motion.
I'll second it.
Kelly's seconding it. Discussion. Kim?
This goes to the budget itself and the numbers. I mean, one of the issues in the audit where the books have not been reconciled in 18 months, where do we stand on the reconciliation? I'm just concerned about spending so close to the mark if we haven't had our books
I
reconciled.
don't think that's not a fair assessment. Our reconciliations are, pretty much on point. We'll have the end-of-year adjustments, as we always have, at the end of every fiscal year. I don't think that's gonna impact our spending in these accounts, with the exception that funds may need to be encumbered.
Other questions? Are we clear on the yes, Brian?
I just want to clarify, so there is leftover capital monies for 18.
Correct.
So it covers that.
The only other thing that I asked, Madam Chairman, is that the breakdown of where they're coming from is not necessarily tied to where the budget money is. So you can see that some of these are in a 4,200 account, some are in a 4,600 account.
Yep.
Majority of our funding right now is in the 4,600. To the extent that I may need to transfer funds, would you be willing to make that part of a motion, to make the budget transfers necessary to undertake the work?
I'll make,
Add that to it.
to
You'll add
allow fund transfers, yeah.
You'll-
I'll second it, yeah.
Mrs. Belcher, can you add that in then?
Specify the accounts. Between just
Between the
42 and
46 and
4,600?
4,200
Just between those
accounts.
two, 42 and 46.
Well, in this case, we do have some funding that would be caught up in equipment as well if we were to approach the septic repair or septic issue as well.
As equipment.
Yeah. So really,
It's a large piece of equipment.
so I would need to take that from equipment
Yep.
if necessary,
Yep.
to make the adjustment, so. So really, the adjustments necessary to accomplish this between the capital accounts.
Sean?
Do we know where, if we're gonna allow transfers going into these two respected accounts, where is the funds coming out of other line items? Usually when you have a transfer like that, it's from A to B. We're just saying
40,
B.
from 42 to 46, or 46 to 42?
Well, remember, we're looking at this as an object level, and so when we look at the 42 and the 4600, those encapsulate your buildings and sites. We also have a myriad of 7-3X accounts, which are equipment accounts, which could be replacement equipment that we haven't acted upon, or new equipment that we haven't had to purchase. It's peppered throughout all of our equipment lines.
Other questions or concerns?
What is the 4200 account, please?
Site improvement.
Site improvements, yeah.
No, it's repair and maintenance. Repair and maintenance is the title of it. It looks to me, that, I'm looking at the 531 year-to-date.
Where are you, Kim?
I'm looking at the budget, year-to-date,
Yep.
531. So it looks like I'm on page 8.
Okay.
Looks like the 4600 line, is it, the majority of the money's in there right now, is that correct? Where that money's gonna be coming out of?
But a lot of money would be coming out of there. I would anticipate that we have monies that I anticipate we're going to be encumbering for the boiler work as well. So I've reduced that on my end of year estimate for the actual spend.
So what line does this represent on this budget recap that has no?
That's an object level report, so the building site major renovations line is your 42 and 4600 combined. Your equipment lines are, and if you look up even the 2840s under computer services, you'll see 733, 734, 738. Those are your equipment lines within that function code. So some of the funds may be coming from equipment lines if they're not otherwise accounted for or encumbered.
But it's all capital.
All capital.
Okay.
Good.
All capital. And I don't anticipate, even with the authorization of the board, we'll do as much as we can, but if other priorities arise, those will have to be addressed and accounted for.
Okay. Brian?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm gonna call a question then. Can you read back the motion, Mrs. Belcher, please?
Mr. Guide, motion to approve the 2018 projects list in addition of the 95,000 field repair as presented, and then to allow the necessary fund transfers from the capital account. Seconded by Mr. Ward.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? 8, opposed, 1, no abstentions. 8-1, it passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Do you need,
Yes, sir.
next meeting is June 21st. Would you want us to approve the 2019 list? Or is this gonna change at all, or, I mean, I guess, how do you?
I'll put this out there in the following way. The way that I view the list you have in front of you is a list of what we have and what we know right now, and we have certainty as to right now, to give an idea and a picture as to what that's going to look like both this year and next year.
Right.
So it would be good to have some direction, because we're getting into our summer work.
Right.
So we would need to know, but we may have other things on that list as well, and, yeah.
We can come back around? or-
Yeah, well, that was my point. Is that if we need
Put it
to,
on
let's
back.
do it sooner than later,
Yep,
so.
we'll put it on the, if
Should
you'll
be on
make a
next-
note of
next-
that.
I would be in favor of the securities improvements right now.
You wanna do that right now?
Yeah, I think that's more work versus design work. You know what I'm saying?
What about the
You wanna
tree
do it
removal?
now, or you
Oh, the
wanna-
tree, oh, okay, I would
I
just.
mean,
yeah.
Tom had something on. So that's gonna be over the summer, the trees, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
why, I really like that.
The trees
done,
are gonna be the
you
same.
know?
That's fine.
So, I mean, it's just the next meeting, so if
Let's-
we're gonna come
let's
back to this next meeting,
Think
awesome.
about it, we'll come back to this next meeting,
Yeah, please
fix
bring
up
this
your
back
list,
next meeting.
make your chart prettier again,
Is it
and
reasonable to
bring it
expect
back
us-
around.
Would
Huh?
it be reasonable to have, in 2 weeks, feedback from
And if
Busby,
maybe we can
Brock's,
get
'cause
Brock, that would be great if
Would
we
think
had
so.
anything,
No
if you're
problem.
able to speak to him.
That way we could address that matter.
Yeah, if
I've
if
worked
it's
with both in the
addressable.
past, I have no problem contacting.
At least it's more information.
I do have a question. So, policy states that a sealed bid process goes out for anything exceeding $10,000. And this is a $95,000 project that we want to get done quickly. And I would ask if the board would be willing to waive policy and accept 3 written quotes for the drain field repairs.
Anyone want to make that a motion?
Just in the essence of time to get a contract in time before June 30.
I'll make that a motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion? What is your, what would be your
He needs,
concern?
so under our procurement policy,
Right.
your procurement policy, anything over 10,000 requires a sealed bid process.
Right, okay.
I'm thinking in the essence of time, do we get 3 written
Won't have
quotes
enough time to get it done by the.
in order to get a
30th.
contract signed by June 30?
We don't have the time.
You don't have
to
the
do that.
time.
You don't think those people would do that like that?
I can,
Okay. But
it's,
But if we
I can
waive
do
the
it either
policy,
way.
then we
Bid, but you already got pricing. I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
waive the policy about the sealed bids. We don't have time
Dan,
enough
did you
with them.
second that?
Danny, Sarah and Danny.
Yes.
Yep.
Is that the bidding policy? That's DJE? Is that the one we're
DJE.
talking about?
DJE.
We talked about earlier, yep.
Yeah.
Policy DJE.
Lee.
So you get 23 days roughly, give or take. We don't have enough time. You're not comfortable with it?
I could have it and have the process be advertised. We wouldn't have time to hit the newspapers with that time frame. But if we reach out directly with the specs to contractors, we can still go with a sealed bid process. But we wouldn't be able to properly advertise, which is contained in the policy. So we'd reach out directly to contractors. We could still go through the sealed bid process, but the advertising appropriately would be a difficult base to cover.
Because you're trying to get it in, like, is it the Sunday paper you try to use and the
Usually
advertising
run it for like
people?
2 weeks or
Yeah,
whatever.
it becomes difficult to get enough advertising time.
We haven't necessarily had to run in newspapers and that sort of thing. There was an extended period of time because those get picked up by the trade journals, one thing or another. It's, I think in general, what is that time that's gonna be open? So even if we publish it on our own, how long is it open for? We've got 20 some odd days. Do you leave it open for 7 days, for 10 days? Is that enough time for someone to be able to pick up and submit a bid, for us to have the formality of the bidding process, acceptance?
Other comments? Why tie our hands? Why get into our, I don't want to be saying, "Ugh, well, we didn't have enough time."
Well, that's, I'm sure, that's, I guess, my point. So it's like, yeah, you're just gonna just call 3 people, and so theoretically, it is a big job. So $95,000 job, why wouldn't we want the world to know about the job?
Fair enough. I mean, we can, I'm thinking what's feasible in this time frame.
Well, it has to do with the newspapers and getting, I mean, we can't just kind of do it. You know, I mean, there's like a process, you either do the whole process or we're doing something else. And that's why I'm asking Kathy kind of quietly.
What's the
about getting it
process?
into the newspaper? Well, we have to advertise it in particular places, so. Unless you completely redefine a new process and say only on the website, sealed bid, you know, you're doing something different than what we normally would do.
We still have to waive it.
I'm hearing that we can't do what we normally do. So it will be something different. It might only be a little bit different, but it'll be something different. So I'm with you, though. We want the world to know, but is it enough just to put it on the website? And not put it in the newspaper, when we normally do the newspaper?
I would say that, you put it on the district's website and then have Mr. Gary, flood all the different contractors that he knows that this is bid and make it very apparent that it's doing it. I would just suspect that the papers, I don't think you would really get a good, hit rate out of that. Somebody knew, oh, wow, I saw this in, the paper and I'm gonna bid on it. I just don't see that happening.
But it changes the policy, so we've got to waive
No,
policy.
I understand that there's some segments of that policy.
So you're just creating a little bit of a hybrid kind of process that might still have sealed bids, but it won't be the complete process the way we've been trying to.
Waive the newspaper advertising portion.
So why
Yeah, you
don't
can take
we-
out pieces of it, or whatever you're comfortable with.
If you'd like, I can post on the website, post it to the trade publications website, and reach out directly to contractors we've worked with in the past.
And
Or anyone
narrow
we have on
down
file.
the length of time.
Anybody that's in our system.
Right, because you've gotta.
And keep it open,
7 days.
7 days, 7 business
7
days.
days brings us to the 14th.
That's, I can make
Another
that happen.
7 days to bring it to us.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that if the superintendent could be able to open it up on the last day of June and execute a contract on that same day.
Would you want to do that, or would you want to come back to us on the 20th? If we put 7 days, 14th closes, we get the information on the 21st.
We'll be
Don't
able to
wait for June,
evaluate our bids.
don't wait for June
Don't
31st, because
have
that
it
day doesn't
changed.
exist.
June 31st is
Excuse
not
me.
in the calendar.
You're correct.
I know that one, yeah.
Well, what's the pleasure then? How do you wanna, because you've got a motion on the floor, Danny?
So, I guess we can still waive policy, and it can still all get done. Doesn't have to come back to the board. It's not going over the 95.
Don't spend
that we're
more than
gonna approve.
95.
It doesn't have to come
Don't
back
plan
to the
on it.
board.
Yeah, you
So-
do a not to exceed number, yeah.
Right, so I'm in favor of modifying whatever policy, whether we need to take newspaper or whatever, but it doesn't need to come back to the board. So I guess my time that I was thinking of doesn't matter if June 21st or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're right.
As long as it gets executed before the end of the month, I'm fine with it.
Like, let me ask you, how important is the sealed bids? Like, is that, sounds like that's important. Is that, if you want them sealed, let's do, then let's do it that way.
I think it's best because it shows it's true, this is the job, everybody bids on it, it's a transparent process.
And I'm not,
We should be able to question it.
I know, I don't do this, but is that doesn't change the time, right? Whether you got the 3 quotes or you got the 3 sealed bids, does it? I mean,
No.
they sending in something, they're just sending it in sealed as opposed to unsealed.
Just giving it on the phone.
Yeah, I was just giving options, but I'm open
And
to anything.
My other thing too is calling the vendors. My frustration with this is, and then some vendors say you call them and then they say that you didn't call them, or, trying to make sure that we keep some sort of record about who we called and whether they replied, and
It's gonna happen tomorrow.
I have faith in talking directly to Paul Busby, which I have filed with the septic system, but Brock's is a very large company.
He'll help you. He'll get you the wood.
Yeah.
He'll hook you up with the Brooks rep, trust me.
we dealt with this with another big contract and then somebody said they didn't get contacted because they didn't get back to us, and then they heard about a contract, So, when we say we're going to reach out, I wanna, try to make sure we have all those verifications, whether emails, whatever they are, phone records, so that somebody doesn't feel slighted in this process. Now, how, are we just using vendors that we've used in the past? Is that who we're contacting?
I think the only thing you're trying to waive is the newspaper. Everything else should be the same, right?
Well, you're comfortable with him calling just particular people, right? Not gonna call everybody, right?
And I think, don't you advertise through,
Yeah, they'll do it in the trade.
contractor, the trades papers, it's gonna,
Yeah,
that's
what I do
not like the
for
Tribune.
even something, a small project. we
But
do
some
the same
people are
thing,
getting a
but-
personal invitation to bid.
That's fine,
And
but
that's
as long
fine,
as you're,
right?
as long as you
Three
would go right
places.
into the trades papers too, that's all,
places.
that's pretty quick.
If it's in 3 places, it's not like we're just singling
We're
out
singling out,
these
it's still
people.
out there.
Yeah.
It's
No,
there.
but we're calling certain people
Yep.
too, that gives them a little bit.
That's,
Yeah.
that's.
You guys are comfortable with that, that's what
Well,
we
it's
do.
standard operating
Seems like
practice.
it's comfortable there, but
We're
Until
waiving,
somebody doesn't like
we're
it.
waiving the
In the
policy,
newspaper,
so,
yeah.
gonna waive policy.
with the expectation that you're still gonna
Do as much as possible.
do as much to the policy as you can.
We always do in our office, yeah.
I figure.
So
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna
the
take a
motion
vote
is
here.
what? What's the new motion now? Because it's not to waive the policy for 3 written quotes to get a contract signed by June 30th. It's to waive policy detail E in as much as feasible in order to ascertain
A contract by the
a contract
30th.
by June 30th.
Yeah.
Are we fine with that?
That's
Yeah,
fine.
that sounds
Yep.
We
that
wanna
sounds
get that
better.
secured.
Yeah.
That's important. All right. Okay, then all in favor? 9-0. Thank you.
good.
Game 5, volleyball. Right over
Volleyball just won. Nice. Excellent.
It's a new tradition, they
Go
graduate, on Saturday, and then they win the state championship in volleyball on Saturday night, that's our,
Yeah.
no jinx, knock on wood.
No. All right, we are up to summer hiring process. Summer hiring process is, who's presenting this? Dr. Metzler?
Oh, that's you, actually.
I am? What am I doing about summer?
It's in the policy.
Oh, we have a policy in front of us.
Yeah. And it's the first
G,
paragraph, I think.
C, F. So,
Action.
June 15th, Ron.
so if you see that third paragraph down, any three members of the school board after the 15th through September 1st, see that paragraph? In absence of a quorum of the full board, be empowered to act on personnel matters as presented before them during the summer months when the board's not meeting, and to bring recommendations forward to the board, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the policy section that we act on here. Last year,
Right, so if you read further, it says,
Yep.
or the board may opt by majority vote to authorize one board member.
Right.
Instead of the three, so the action would be either to, really no action, just to adhere to your policy, or opt for a single board member to act on behalf.
so last year it was Brian and me, and was it Peter Belo? I mean, people that were gonna be around for sure could come in. I think Brian did most of it, didn't he?
Brian was here every day.
Well, he was the chairman.
Well, 2 days a week.
The chairman took care of stuff.
Oh, then Brian should be one of those three again.
He's used to it.
Be around for all but 10.
You'd be around?
I'll be around for about all but 10 days.
Oh, there we go. There's one.
I'll be around.
And I'll be around.
There's three.
I missed one.
Do we need Sue and Kelly?
I think the chair
They
should
both
probably
said
be
it.
involved unless she travels to Europe.
Maybe.
Don't think I'm gonna
Do
win
we
a
need a
trip to
motion?
Europe. If we're not changing,
Staying with the three, I mean, we're not.
we'll stick with those three, yes? Right?
General consent, yes, we're good?
I just have a question, because the way this policy reads, it says, in the absence of a quorum of the full board, so if there's a full board, if there's a quorum available, then the quorum would meet to approve. You wouldn't just automatically go with the three
So
people.
you've got one, so you got a one summer hire, I don't know, July 13th. You wanna call a meeting of the board to hire that person? Or you gonna allow these three to take care of the recommendation from the superintendent and?
I'm looking at the policy. The policy says you only do it if you can't get a quorum of the board. That's the way I read the policy.
So in other words, you should try to obtain
A
a
quorum.
quorum of the board, but what this is giving you, if this is adopted and in
It's
place, it gives
opted
you the
out, yeah.
authority to even conduct board business with
Well,
a
only
non-quorum.
hiring, this is only.
Yeah.
So
but
did,
for hiring,
I'd asked that, I don't think the chair did that last year. He didn't ask, every time he had somebody to hire, he didn't ask for a meeting.
No, I did not.
Huh?
I did not know.
He did not.
Well,
I'd almost want to send this to policy to strike that in absence of a quorum.
well,
It's
like.
because it says that the board is not meeting in those.
It's
You
not
just
just
wrote that?
meet
Oh,
during
perfect.
that time. It's just to expedite getting hiring done.
I get it, it means because we're not having meetings, it's just worded funny, that's all.
I wouldn't get wrapped up too deep in it.
During summer recess or something.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good with it.
I mean, the point is because we're not meeting over the summer,
Right.
Yeah.
which is the whole point of it.
I'd like to meet over the summer.
Well, we haven't had that
I'd like
discussion
to meet
yet.
over the summer.
So the action we're looking for is we're gonna stick with policy? And that Brian, Kelly, and myself will take care of the hiring, should there not be a meeting with a quorum available and,
So you need an action on that, I'll make that motion.
I don't know if we need an action,
If
but
we
we
need one.
need a consensus or something on this, what we're gonna do. It's,
So you're gonna
it's,
try.
this is one
I
of
mean,
the
it's already-
boilerplate things we've done.
It's already policy.
already
Right.
there. We don't need
It's
to
already
vote on it.
here, we
Yeah, I
don't
don't
need to
think we need to
vote.
vote on
We're
it,
just
so.
saying, this is what we're doing, this is what we normally do.
I'm good with it.
It's kinda one of those boilerplate summer things you have to do.
Can I bring up why it's on?
Sure.
In the past, it's been on every year around this time, because there have been years where you didn't use three people, they waived the policy and they went with one person.
Yep, we have.
But this is the
Yeah,
policy, this
2
is what you
years
do.
ago, 2 years ago, I was it.
Yeah, and not to influence any discussion at all, but I can tell you it's important for us to act fast on some of these people because multiple districts are making multiple offers, and we've lost people in the past. This particular year, though, we're doing pretty well with the process of getting people, because sometimes somebody's in the queue and they're waiting for the job offer and it doesn't happen fast enough, and then somebody else offers them and they leave. So, and then obviously in the summer, it's, if anybody has openings, You know, the pool is thin when it gets to the summer, because most people have already accepted jobs. So, just to keep that in mind.
Okay?
Sure.
Is there a motion to send that policy back to the policy committee, though?
I'd like to make that motion.
All right, so Kim's making the motion. Do we have a second to send it back? Sean is a second. Any discussion? Kim?
Can we please look at the model policy for the New Hampshire School Board Association to see what it says?
I think he's gonna do that every time, but we can certainly ask him to
And
do
that's
that.
Probably where this language came from.
I would bet so too.
I don't know.
Most likely.
Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor of it going back to policy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? I'm voting against it. It's fine.
And Jennifer's not in the room.
And Jen's gone. Okay, we're at evaluation results. The problem that I see, to be frank with you, is that the document and the tool that we have used over the last 4 or 5 years to have
Longer. It was here before me.
longer, or so 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, didn't fit as well this year with the types of goals and the school board goals that we produced to work under. So I personally found it much more difficult to match up any kinds of statements or scoring, if you wished. I think it's important to look at how we did with our goals, whether we met any of them or some of them. So what you've got here is the document. I haven't seen this myself. This is the first time I've seen it as well. It shows our own evaluation and the 360 that we voted to do. So we need to write goals for next year. Can these go with us, or are these yours?
That's a public document.
Okay. Here's my thought. I haven't had a chance to read all of these. We can't possibly do it like this. They were ready. You could have come in and get them, I'm sure, but, I'd like us to have you were just putting them together.
Yeah, they weren't ready.
I mean, this is a tough time of year. We don't usually do it at this time of year, but
That's right, they're usually done back in
they're
February.
February-ish. So I'd like us to consider this, look it over, because we need to write some goals. Kathy checked all of you for dates, and there's 2 forms in your packet here. A work session and a training session. Dates, based on our availability that we had given. I'm proposing that we study these evaluation, look at the goals that we wrote last year, hopefully use some of those to model some goals for this coming year, and come back writing goals on the 14th of June, if you're available, at 7 o'clock. We have the library secured in a work session, just like we did last year, and write some actionable, SMART goals, if you want to call them that, and get some goals written down. That's my proposal.
I like it.
I like it.
Yeah.
Just looking at this document on page 1 through 6 here.
I know.
No one answered this?
Where are you?
You're talking,
No one
staff-
answered
none of the
this.
board members?
Right.
And there was no responses in the self-evaluation from the actual school board members, that's correct.
Well, I know, as I said, I attempted to do this, but I could not make head nor tails of some of these
Okay.
questions, so.
I want everybody to take this home and digest this.
Okay.
It's a lot here. And then I'd like to come back in the work session and say, now what are we gonna do? I agree with you, Kim. It's what I said when I began. I had a hard time using the tool that we had for evaluation to evaluate ourselves on these goals. It didn't match up.
it wasn't even looking at the goals, it was just
Okay.
looking at the questions. We're clearly committed to continuous improvement. I'm just picking a question. What is I know what continuous improvement is in terms of a manufacturing. What is continuous improvement? Could somebody define that for me? Because I can't answer this question.
Okay.
It would be subjective.
Well, does it not have a meaning?
You can do it. So,
In my world, it has a meaning, but it doesn't have a meaning in the school board world.
It's
It's a manufacturing term.
My comment showed up.
did something
Is that
happen?
a last year comment by mistake? I'd have to talk to you later about it, but there was no current data from that populated the survey.
Really?
And you said there's something in there? I
It
missed.
says one of his comments is in there, but.
Oh, you know what? I might have erroneously not taken it out from the previous.
No, that's the comment I made.
This year or last year?
This year.
This year, yeah.
There was no comment in there from you this year.
Okay.
We have to write goals, whether we use this document or not, we have to write goals. So, I ask you to take it home. Study away, it's a lot to read.
Okay, can I speak to Kelly?
Sure.
I'm not 100% sure about how this works. Google has this encrypted kind of thing, so I don't, the only thing I can think of if one of you or two of you or more of you filled this out and it didn't come up, would be that the drop down, was there a name that they had to, because if you just use the link could have went anywhere.
Nope, the link would allow you to populate it, and then, even if you didn't choose a name at the end, it would still record that there was a timestamp. I have a timestamp.
No, I know the timestamp. I'm saying it wouldn't record who it came from. How would you know it came from Kelly?
So
Because
you
there
have
were
to
none
submit.
in there to come, the only, honestly.
Oh, it's two different links then, what you're telling me. There was a school board member link and then a link that went to the administrators?
That's correct.
Yeah, two different
So,
links.
I don't know.
There was a timestamp for Dr. Farah, and there was no data. That's the only record of a school board member that I saw based on the survey that attempted to do the survey.
Is it possible you could have gotten the other link somehow and sent it from, I don't know.
One link to,
I got the link, I
From the
clicked
school
on it, I
board,
went to
yeah.
it, I answered all the questions.
you
and-
answered all the questions.
Absolutely.
I stopped. I did a few and I
And then I hit
stopped.
submit and it went in.
Really?
I undid it.
Absolutely.
So,
Weird then, if you don't have a timestamp from Sue.
I don't have a timestamp from Sue.
She didn't submit it.
No, she didn't submit.
You have to submit it.
You have to submit it.
So you,
Kelly
so
said he
Kim, you
did.
submitted an empty one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that makes sense.
Tried to answer, I started, and I said, no, these questions don't make any sense to me in
So-
any context.
I can see if there are multiple sheets or layers. That would be a brand-new experience that, I mean,
Yeah.
I can check on that, Kelly, most definitely.
Because I know I did.
I believe you.
And that's my comment, and it has my name next to it.
I think self-evaluation is really important. I've said this a number of times. I don't think the document was friendly to our needs this year. More than willing to have another document looked at that we could use as we come into February, because we're
Well, I'm
gonna set some
confused
goals.
here. Because, so these comments here are from who?
360. It's a 360.
The 360 results.
These are from the people that participated in the 360.
Which are who?
They're administrators.
Administration.
Because there's comments in here that are mine.
What page are you on, Dan?
That I know they're mine, unless some administrator has the same
Exact comment.
sense of, yeah.
That's probably where yours are, Kelly.
So did you answer the 360?
Oh, I see what you're
saying.
saying.
Oh, did you
Is it
actually-
possible
Did you
that?
do the
Have we got-
360
have we got
instead
the
of the
wrong link?
I could have,
self-evaluation?
because there was no spot for me to put my name in.
And there's no spot for you.
Oh,
So maybe we got
I
the wrong
understand what
link.
you're saying. I
So-
understand what you're saying.
See, what I was saying is you got the same link that
Yeah,
the
but
administrators
different,
got, and
Scott.
there would be no way to tell who it
Right,
came from.
that's right.
Right.
That was my
There
point.
wasn't a spot, so that means that, right, because Dr. Farah got the,
I got the one that I had to put my name in.
Where does this come from? Where did this?
What?
Where did
Huh?
this?
What'd you say?
I see what you're
I
saying.
can't,
They've been using it for 8 or 9 years. It's the same.
Right?
Yep.
So I don't know.
One of the things I struggle
guess
with
maybe I
with
screwed
the
it up.
evaluation tools that we use in general is that, it seems very subjective. There's no real, rubric to explain, you know, what the expectation is to be, you know, a 1, 2, 3, or 4.
It gets worse with 9 numbers.
Yeah.
So I think 9 is just, I don't like 9. It's.
9 is Ted
There was a
Williams'
time,
number.
there was
I
a
like
time where
9.
if you put 5, 5 meant nothing.
And I'm sure you've seen the Massachusetts, the DESI one is,
Yeah, no,
there's
they,
a,
no, they have an
very-
excellent, tool now. It's new, it's the last 4 or 5 years, I think.
yeah.
We
But
might
it's
want to
very
make part of our
specific.
discussion at some time, we might want to look at another document, Lee.
Yep.
And Kim. And Jen. And look at some other kinds of documents that we could maybe fit our needs now and going forward in the next couple of years. I don't know. I filled it out before, it just didn't work for me this year. So, all good things to talk about when we have our work session. Kim?
Well, in my mind now, because now what we had was school board members scoring in what was the administrator's 360
don't know that.
evaluation, so
Right,
those
right.
scores are absolutely
But
invalid.
I'm saying.
No, but Sue, you've got, so I'm reading comments that I think are administrator comments, but they're really school board member comments.
That's
How am I supposed to figure out what's
Then
really
don't read
going-
it at all and just come and write new goals on the 14th.
Sue,
I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense to.
As far as the scoring goes, you're correct.
Yeah.
The scoring would not be correct. If there
I think
if there's a mix of administrators and school board self-evaluation within that, because they were not separated out. That's correct.
Right.
As far as the comments go, you can decide what to do with those, but as far as the actual scoring, you're right.
But the comments are still valuable
I think
regardless
the
of
comments are
whether
valuable.
360 or
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't care who said them, really.
it's a perception and.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. I've also given you this training date. So Kathy and I worked with, Barrett Christina at the New Hampshire School Boards Association, thank you. And this is what he can provide. We sent and had some information that the list we provided, that would probably be 2, he said 2 or 3 days of training if we wanted to do all of them, and I didn't think we were gonna spend 8 hours here. So I chose the top one of the ones we had voted on, and he's willing to come down here and do a 90-minute program for us. Either he or his gang of friends will be here. He gave us dates that he was available, we were able to match him up with our dates. This is the one we could match up.
Can I talk about that day, maybe another session?
Absolutely. And let's see it may be another session in fall that he'd be able to do for us on one of those other topics. But I didn't think we were gonna be able to start at 7 o'clock at night and go till 2 in the morning on 2 or 3 topics. At least I wasn't
I
willing to.
have a graduation that evening in Hampstead.
Okay. All right, on those 2 things, we are at administrators report.
Just for clarification, Madam Chair, so these meetings now are on and,
On.
okay,
I picked them, finally, off our list.
just want to add it to my calendar.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Kathy, do all the work and then us collating it.
Sorry, I have all kinds of stuff here.
Administrators report.
Yep. Oh, okay, so, is this okay to do publicly?
Well, you're not gonna give any information about it other
Yeah,
than.
no,
that.
I know it's pretty
Right.
wide open, okay.
Yeah, but you wouldn't say the person's name or the actual incident.
Okay. All right, without too many details, I'm asking you to, I'm recommending the board approve the reimbursement for the cost of a coat. It was a $225 coat that was damaged during an animal incident at Danville Elementary earlier this year. If specifics are needed, the board should consider going to non-public under RSA 91A3, paragraph 2, section C.
I'll make the motion on your recommendation that we reimburse this person for $225 for their coat.
I'll second it.
Hearing no, we can't ask questions
If you
unless we're
want
gonna go
questions,
into
we go into
we've gotta go into
So
non-public.
if you're recommending it, I'm fine with it. It's not.
Okay, I'll call for a vote then, all in favor?
Great, thank you very much, appreciative of that. A donation, we accepted a $500 donation from the Methuen Construction that was used to support the New Hampshire Scholars trip to the recognition program in Manchester on May 31st. Monies were applied to the cost of the bus transportation. Okay, now we're moving into a part where I think we're gonna need to go into non-public at some point during this next couple of items. Anticipate enrollment numbers. Okay, so you'll find a projected enrollment report by school. That's in your board packets. That's not in their board packets?
Should be in their board packet.
It's stapled.
Is it stapled to his?
Where is it?
No, that's tripod stuff.
It was emailed.
Yeah, it was emailed.
I know I emailed some of this
Oh,
information
maybe
to.
that's what it was at that.
Yes,
You know what?
emailed.
I pulled it aside though. But you know what though?
I don't have it in there.
I don't have it.
I don't have it.
No.
I apologize for that.
Did you do it tonight?
Set aside.
Well, we,
But it was emailed out to everybody because it was an email that you had to them that I had printed out.
it's what I sent you, and if you need a hard copy in front of you right now, which I just told you you had, we can make one and give it to you. if
I
that-
can run up and get one if you guys.
You need
It's gonna take a few
the
minutes.
projected enrollment numbers? It's up to you, I mean,
We don't need that, but we also have this other document that you sent us that people are probably gonna need. And that's not in our packet.
yeah, we're talking organizational chart,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
that's,
I mean,
I'm
I
going to
have-
the non-public, we're gonna be here for a while with that. I'd ask we go into non-public.
Wanna do that now?
Yeah, that's
Wanna
staffing.
do anything else?
Why don't we finish everything and do the non-public stuff?
Non-public at the
Yeah, good,
end,
good.
please.
Jen had asked, and we agreed to get back to you on a transportation update. So, I asked, some pointed questions, because we struggled in May, and you got a lot of phone calls. So, I have some information. I think the most important information, for you is basically, they've made some changes to try to address some of the driver shortages and those sorts of things. Total penalty, charged back to, money that we charge them is $14,652.04. Totals 26 days. They've made quite a few changes. June hasn't been too bad. May was pretty bad. May was the worst month,
Always is.
for some reason. Yeah.
Like, how do we, so I think that's my question, because, I mean, my kids have been out of the elementary school for quite a few years now, and every single year, this is an issue. Every year. And it jumps, it feels like it jumps from town to town to town to town. So, here we are with a new contract with this bus company. What are they doing to address this known issue that happens year over year over year?
Yeah, I think, I have a list of actions that they've taken. And so they try to hire new drivers. I don't know if that's the time of year when people just quit and they end up without drivers. Is it the time when people are taking time off? I don't know. I mean, it's not one thing. People get sick, people leave, people quit, they get rid of people, we hire
But it's
people.
always that time of year.
Yeah, no, it's the worst.
And so they know that.
It's clearly the worst month, yeah. Well, and then to your point, I hear the same thing in Hampstead. Is it a kind of a moving thing, like,
It
all right,
very much feels
shift
that
it to
way.
Atkinson, and shift it to Hampstead.
I mean, and from a business perspective, if that was, somebody's business, and you know that is kind of a bottleneck for you every year, at some point, you come up with a plan to address that. Because it does impact our students, and they're getting home very late sometimes, and parents are standing at the bus stop, they're waiting, kids are getting skipped in the morning, they're standing outside.
Yeah, no, I
It
don't.
goes on and on.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, you've seen we're always advertising for drivers and the high drive. So you have all the drivers, and then in any given day, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 are out in the course of, and without any warning. And so then they're doubling up buses. I can't tell you that the routes, though. I think there was some questions about some of them being on the bus for more than an hour, and I don't see that anywhere. I see the longest run is I believe like 51, 52 minutes. I mean, that's close to an hour. And that's not to say it wouldn't be over an hour on those particular runs. But, yeah, I mean, we can go back to them and say, you know, in May, this is gonna happen.
Well, at least let's go on record as saying that. Look, you know, this has happened time over time. It might not always happen in Atkinson, but it's happening in other communities. We're telling you, hello, we're aware of this. We want you to address this, or at least be aware that we're aware.
I agree, especially as we're gonna entertain a new contract with them for multiple years. It's not a good way to start off on
No.
See if you can do something about this May problem.
So what I heard from May, I'm skipping through the months here because we have month by month. May, the sports season starts, so the charter drivers cannot always cover the PM routes. So they lose some drivers, 1, 2, 3, they're covering, and then they get some people from inside, they're trying to cover the open routes. We had, you know, sometimes drivers aren't allowed to drive for different reasons. Can't go into detail, but, yeah, I don't help them, and
Yeah, so the sports things, I mean, May's the big sports for middle school, high school.
Well, then they should be hiring drivers that just do
You'd think
field
they
trip
could do
sports,
that.
things like that. We're paying them
Well, I
enough
think-
money to do that. They
Kelly?
should try and do that.
I think your point is, the bottom line is, they signed a contract to provide what is in the contract. They need to do that. It's not up to us to decide how they do it.
Bottom line.
I'm a businessman. I signed a contract to do a job.
You do it.
If I have to hire extra people to do it, that's what it is. I have to do what I have to do, so.
And so my only
I feel
leverage.
the same way.
Yeah, I'm with you. My only leverage was really, which we didn't do 3, 4, 5 years ago, is to make them.
Charge back.
Is to find them.
Yeah.
To get that money back. So we've recovered, you know, close to $15,000, 14,600.
So we want the routes covered. We want our athletics covered. I certainly don't want, you know, and it trickles down. Obviously, they're gonna cover the varsity sports first. The poor middle school track team is the low end of the totem pole. I don't want those kids not allowed, you know, because they need to cover the routes first. We've said that numbers of times.
Yeah, so here was the struggle with them, especially the spring and fall to some degree. We get into,
get a
and they
little-
said, what's the priority? I was like, get kids to and from school.
Exactly, that was my point. I think
And we've said that.
that should be before any kind of athletics.
And then before you worry about, and that's why Sandy has to leave sometimes and drive, and, you know, everybody's pitching in to try to get the athletics. And then it was like, okay, varsity comes first. Okay, what about academic decathlon team? Like, oh, well, they need
The
transportation.
math team or the.
And then I was like, in
music
that order,
group.
JV and then freshman, then we get to middle school sports. It's,
How often is Sandy actually partaking in this,
Should we be talking about that?
you know, if I've hear that she's pretty much almost all the time dealing with these
She,
issues.
in a very
Driving for
positive
them.
way, I know we shouldn't be talking about employees publicly, but in a very positive way, she does whatever it takes to get kids to and from. So she pitches in a lot.
No, I agree with that, and that's a good thing, but the problem is that are we recouping her salary, her time that's being diverted to help on out some third-party vendor who's not fulfilling their contract?
Well, and my issue too is, I prefer to have her here, because I need her here to take the phone calls, because then somebody's taking a phone call that's not necessarily a transportation person, and who's that? Is it, you know?
Well, especially if she's driving, you know those phone calls are coming in.
Yeah.
Because it means there's an error, something's wrong.
No,
someplace.
I agree.
That's
The
right back to
question is,
Sean's
if we're only
point.
charging them, I mean, we're getting a chargeback for them not providing a driver, but yet we're providing a driver on top of that.
Yeah.
And are we getting compensated for that?
I don't know the exact answer, so, I mean, I believe we are being compensated. I know that she, you know, I don't know how much I should go on about this, but she, you know,
Easy.
she keeps her hours so she can keep her driver's license, her bus driving license, so there's some benefit to her to help too, which is good, and she's been great, and you know, I have to say, even when, you know, she had surgery and different things, you know, a foot injury, and so I'm watching her going out to her car to go drive a bus. I mean, she's just been incredible.
No,
Incredible.
I'm totally in support
I know,
of
and
her.
I just, you know,
Helping
but
out.
the hard part is then we don't, you know, our job is the administrative piece, which is, you know, and so Tom's taking a bit of that, too. So, yeah, it's,
Well, let's direct the superintendent to at least put on notice that we are cognizant that they gotta do something better. We say this pointedly. It's great we've recouped $14,000, but.
yeah, I can say,
But
can
it
I
is a
just,
source of frustration every single year.
we hired a new licensed driver in June, sorry, Kim, and then, and 2 potential drivers have signed on for training.
That's
You know, and
good.
I have to approve the hires, and sometimes I can't. You know, I mean,
I tell you why, right?
I can't get into why, but
It's about a 3-month training.
It takes a while.
minimum in order to get person on the bus,
Right.
the driver.
Kim, you had your hand up, did you?
Well, again, you have problems with drivers, and I know, based on all our transportation things that we've gone through here, that it's gonna cost us the same whether we consolidate middle and high school buses or if we don't. But if you consolidated middle and high school and you still had 29 buses for elementary, it would solve the driver problem at the middle and high school, because you'd have extra drivers that were kind of on call. And I don't know why we have discounted this whole idea of combining bus routes and the fact that we could save these kids from 50-minute bus drives. So I hope that this is not a dead issue, because I still think it bears discussing on consolidating those buses, especially when the high school is dropping by 30 students next year.
So if we're gonna have that discussion, I want all the experts here.
I understand that. I'm just saying, I'd like it added to the agenda again.
Can I just, some feedback to that? Most of the complaints that I get are from the elementary school, because I think that's where the bottleneck is.
Right.
I know, I completely agree. I do think the high school and middle school should be combined and get those routes shortened, get some of those discipline issues spread out amongst more buses. But the middle school and high school kids do hop on one bus or the other. So sometimes my high school child will ride home with my middle school child.
All be on one bus.
And that's great. He's home even earlier, actually, but the bottleneck ends up being at the elementary. Yeah.
Okay,
Well, what we'll do is we'll revisit this again, and obviously have a new contract, and I mean, it means more drivers, but I think, to your point, if you have X amount of drivers and X amount of buses, if there's less buses on the road, we might be, it may help. I just don't know how, I wanna try to keep them all under an hour. I don't wanna get into
Yeah.
routes over an hour, so, Dan.
go ahead, Dan.
So I don't know this, obviously, and nobody's here to answer this question. How many buses do we use on our elementary runs?
29.
29 buses on our elementary runs,
Yep.
so it doesn't matter, the driver's amount is the same. Even if you were to combine the middle and high school, you still need 29 buses for the elementary. That's what I'm getting at.
That's what I said, that's the bottleneck.
Right, but it's not gonna matter. You combine middle and high school, you still need the same amount of drivers for the elementary schools.
That's right.
Start later.
It's not gonna change the amount of drivers you need, because you still have 29
Well, there's
buses.
different reasons to combine the middle and, but that's a different
But I'm talking on a driver-related thing.
Your fault.
Nobody's saying go down to less buses for elementary. So we still need 29 drivers.
So your frustration is a two-tiered system.
I know
I
what
tell you,
my
in
frustration
Hampstead, we
is.
have a three-tiered system, which is even more complicated. 'Cause
My frustration is a two-tiered system?
our frustration,
Oh.
we only have
We
two
have
tiers,
two
because we just
tiers.
said elementary, middle school,
They
high
have
school.
three.
They have three, because, and if anything happens and the buses don't get back, and then the middle school, then to the elementary school, I mean, they get home at 5 o'clock.
Two would be better.
Okay, let's keep this on our
sorry.
short list of things and revisit it and have the experts here. At least,
Yeah.
at least let them know.
Again, this can be a comprehensive kind of report out if you want
Okay.
to.
I want to do the personnel report, and I want committees to be able to report out, because committee has, safety has some stuff they want to do. We have people in the audience for that. So can we go on and do personnel, and we come back to the things we need to go into non-public for, okay?
Okay, personnel report, we had a late retirement, one professional, Charlene Antonakis. I would've gotten that right. I had to say it in my head first. Antonakis. Danville elementary teacher, been with the district for 16 years. So I want to take these 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we can start with that one.
A motion to accept the resignation, the retirement of that name.
Charlene Antonakis. Can I have a second?
I do, second.
Kelly?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Great, thank you.
That's
And
unanimous.
the question you normally would ask is, when you get the late retirement, were they post-retire, so this person wasn't eligible because you have to get 20 years.
That's correct.
So I don't know if everybody knew that, that's why. So sometimes you can get late retirements, because they don't need to meet a deadline. These are resignations or release from contracts. It could be one or both. Some of them may have signed the contract, they may not have, but these are all people that have accepted positions elsewhere. Professional. Paul Henderson, the social studies teacher from our middle school, been with us for 12 years. Megan Morgan, speech, language pathologist, she's been with us for 4 years. Megan Pearson, a Danville elementary teacher, she was with us for 12 years. James Segroy, middle school technology teacher, was with us for 3 years. And Crystal Von Bargan, Danville elementary teacher, that was with us for 1 year.
So they're resigning or
They're
asking to be released from
asking
their
your permission,
contract.
or my permission, or our permission to be released from a contractual obligation that they may have already signed their contract.
Motion?
Yeah, I'll motion it.
Ellie's motioning to accept those
Second.
resignations and/or release from contracts. Danny is seconding it. All in favor?
Thank you.
Unanimous?
These are, when you get the resignate or release from contract, it's pretty typical prior to July 1st to say, but when you get into late July into August, sometimes we may hold people to contractual obligations. Moving forward, we've done that before, but we have plenty of time. Renominations, bringing back Christopher Gemp, that's a technology teacher at the middle school, and Samantha Wallach, math teacher at the middle school. Those are renominations, those were people that would have been on the list earlier.
Motion to approve.
Kelly's made the motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Dan's made the second. All in favor? Nine.
Great, thank you. And finally, these are some of the nominations that I promised we'd be able to get back. We're trying to get to that number that you directed us to get to. Had a great, just the process has been just mainstream. We've just been getting people through more quickly, getting job offers, getting people signed, getting them to agree. So this was a really good bunch that we were able to take care of. Elizabeth Caswell, science teacher at the middle school. Carol Donovan, TLC special education teacher. Brenna Fitzgibbon, middle school special education teacher. Amanda Komarick, middle school science teacher. Jeffrey Lavelle, Pollard Elementary School teacher. Nancy Livet, math teacher at the middle school. Abby Laguerre, middle school special educator. Sandra McKean, Sandown North special education teacher. Jacob Piedra, Pollard kindergarten teacher. Rachel Riley, is a Danville special education ASD teacher. Larissa Smith, math teacher at the high school, and Rebecca Worthen, Sandown North elementary teacher.
Motion to accept all nominations.
Motion by Dan, second by Jen. All in favor?
Thank you very much,
Fine.
appreciate it.
Can I ask a question about these real quick? So the renominations were ones that were from a previous list.
Called back,
Put back on.
Called back, those were positions, if you look, I think you could probably match them up, well, maybe you can't match them up completely, but the positions, they were not brought back because those positions were not going to be there, and then the positions opened up, so we called them back. So those were not performance, non-renewals, those were people we brought back.
And then these other ones,
These are all new hires, not new positions, but new hires into positions that are open.
Open positions, new hires into those open positions.
So these are people new to the district. The two renominations are people that you may be familiar with, but they're not new to the district.
I know some students who will be very happy with that middle school math teacher on there.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to committee reports. I'm gonna let, Mr. Ward go first with safety.
Okay. So we had a safety meeting, and something that came out of the safety meeting was brought to our attention that there was some AEDs in the district that are, they're not gonna be supported anymore. That manufacturer and that style isn't gonna be supported anymore, so maintenance-wise and redoing them wise, they're out of date, so we can't really do anything with them. As well as they don't match what the towns use. So it's my understanding that when you use one and the paramedics show up, or the people from the town show up to take over, they would have to swap out a unit because it doesn't match what they're using. So having to replace some of them because they're at end of life and aren't supported anymore, it would make sense to go with a different style to get them all in line so that they can be used by the towns to support those schools. So I have here, ever a quote that we asked, from the safety committee, we asked them to get a quote on what they would be. And the total, well, the 15 AEDs that are required and the supporting stuff that goes with them would be $19,424. And that's a discounted price. They show a list price on here per AED of $2,100, and the bid price was $1,199. The wall cabinets, $150, and their bid was $112. And there was the pediatric electrodes. They list for $95. Their bid was $81. And then there was a handful of small stuff that they would give to us for nothing. So that was the total bid. So if we have any questions, we have a nurse here.
What's the total bid?
$19,424.
Question. Do we know if there's any, like,
Come on up, Kate.
grant or funds available from the state?
Dr. Metzler. And this is,
I'm Kate Sherman-Durish. I'm the nurse at Pollard. I'm also the lead nurse for the Timberlane District. There are some grants, but when you look at, it's not grants, they're discounted prices. When you look at them, they are actually more expensive than what we have quoted for these machines. And they are also not quoting the machine that we want as well. They were quoting machines that we already have in place that are now really kind of becoming obsolete. So we are trying to not fall back in with those same machines.
so what's the safety committee looking for us to do?
The safety committee is recommending that we spend the money to buy the AEDs needed to keep up with keeping them current, as well as ones that work with the towns. Given the discussion we just had about the projects and the money in the 18 budget, I don't feel as though this is a dire emergency to have it done right now, or is it?
I think what the safety committee wanted was sooner rather than later. I mean, like I said, they work, but the concern is if something does fail on these, there is no replacement, they won't fix it, we would be out and we'd be continuously having to do this
So we're flying by the seat of our pants with these particular units.
Right, exactly.
So, where would we come up with the money?
That's gonna be my next question, is where would that money come from?
You find $20,000 to, because that's what it is, 19 something, something.
424, yep. Mr. Dowd could shed some light.
I can also add, while you're sitting down, I can also add another piece. This particular company that we'd like to work with and the Zoll manufacturer, because the Life Pack Medtronics are now obsolete, they are giving a rebate back. So depending on the manufacture date, we could get 200 for the machines, or we could get 100. By the machines that we have and the dates of the manufacture dates of them, it would be $1,100 that we would get back in rebate from. But that would be after we get the new ones.
Still
It's not,
paying for it.
it's not, we're keeping
Still
them
paying
until
them.
we get new ones, and then we would be able to get about $1,100 rebate back.
Kate knows how to butter
For
me
all
up
of
here.
us.
So, we do have some money in equipment, which at this point, we certainly could run out in the current year, spend down. I certainly, as we're putting the budget together, this is an example of one of those things that comes up, and as we're getting a little closer to fine in refining what our needs are for the upcoming year, certainly that's something that I would put propose to allocate in the 19 budget. So take your pick. I can bump
Yeah, I
something
mean,
from.
even if we do it in the 19 budget, that's just July. July 1.
We'll do it in the July one.
So, I think
I don't wanna wait till next time.
No,
this
but
time,
I'd
a
feel
whole
better
year with-
about just, we could do it and say we're gonna spend it July 1, and do that now.
Other thoughts? You need to have these units, there's no doubt about that. In all our buildings. Brian?
I don't see the point of waiting until the 19 budget. If you've got money in the 18 budget, let's do it.
So Brian says not to wait. That's what I would say too, but I
Yeah, you
don't,
get the money.
I don't control
The money's in the 18 budget?
You'd have enough money.
We have some excess funds, as I discussed earlier, in equipment. You did make a motion or directive earlier
Some.
to be able to spend some of those funds down with some of the projects we had identified, and I can make that work, bump something over. I would ask that if I do need to move funds between functions, because we have equipment, replacement equipment, perhaps in a line in a function that we're not going to be using, that you provide your assent to that transfer. I don't think it'd be anything exceeding what we would be up against anyway in terms of a dollar amount, but just be aware that may be the case. So if it's the board's directive to have it done this year, we'll have it done this year.
So I'd entertain a motion, what you'd like to do, and direct Mr. Dowd.
I'll make the motion to buy the AEDs out of the 17-18 budget, and Mr. Dowd to make any transfers he needs.
Yep.
We have a second?
Second.
I'm gonna let Sarah have the second. Any other discussion? Can you just quickly, not to belabor the point, but 15, where are 15 gonna go?
So 15 are AEDs for the complete whole district. There's actually one in this building behind me, one at the PAC, 3 at the high school. 2 are stationary, that are one outside the CAF, one in the nurse's office. One is with the trainer that goes out to all the games, that travels with her. Right now, there was one at the middle school, and with these 15, it would be purchasing a second additional one. Anybody been to that middle school? It's a big school. It really does need a second one out, kind of in that 8th grade, way out their wing. Danville has 2 that would be replaced. Atkinson has 2 that would be replaced. 1 at all the other elementary schools. Pollard is in the same boat. We have 1, and we're asking for a second one, because if you know Pollard, same thing. Recess is very far away from the CAF, and it's better to have multiple floors. So it's 2 new units, but these would have been units we would have been asking for anyways.
13 replacement.
So 13 replacement, 2 new. And also in that quote, which it does not reflect it, but this company is also willing to throw in AED trainers. The nurses do all the CPR training for us, and they would get us 2 new Zoll company trainers. So we're training all our staff on the same machines that they're gonna see every single day in their buildings. So it's very, for a lay person to be able to know this is the machine anytime at all the schools is much more comforting than kind of the old machines that we've been using.
Including the price,
So-
or is that out of your PD?
It's zero.
Okay,
For
so
free,
does
he's
that help?
throwing them in.
Good. I
I
like
know.
it. Rebates, free stuff?
Yeah, rebates, I tried.
We've been discussing these AEDs the last couple of years, and Atkinson, for example, has had wonderful donations, but the life of those and the type of those has kind of aged out, so we've got to do something about it, so. All right, I'm gonna call for a vote then, unless there's any other discussion. All in favor of the motion? 9-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other committee reports?
The personnel, no, is it personnel?
Personnel.
Personnel committee. We didn't meet, but we had set up a meeting, which, in order to discuss that, we're going to a non-meeting, so if it's the board's pleasure, after our non-public, if there's time, we can do a non-meeting. If
Just a
not, it's
couple of minutes.
Just a few minutes. If not, it certainly can wait till the 21st, there's nothing pressing. So, but we can do it tonight. Make it quick. We can do it
See
before
how
the non-public.
the
Doesn't matter.
non-public goes. And,
Do it whenever.
Lee, anything from policy?
We were scheduled to meet this evening. We didn't because of other events conflicting with it. We're scheduled to meet again on the 21st.
Sarah?
So we had our last curriculum and assessment committee meeting earlier in the week. We went over a lot of stuff. So I tried to kind of write out some notes, just to kind of touch on the different topics. Our agenda was pretty full. So we did have a introduction of the grade 6 new report card coming out. So it was implemented, it's a hybrid model of the regular grading system along with the competency base. So it was implemented this year in grades K through 5. So grade 6 is going to implement reporting of our curriculum competencies to parents each trimester next school year, along with the traditional percentage-based grade, like I said. Parents are going to see a competency-based reporting based on a 1 to 4 scale like they've had this year, and students will continue to earn a letter grade. So the only difference is that additional information will be provided to parents to help them know their child's progress towards course and class competencies. Rising 6th grade students and families are already receiving competency-based report cards at the elementary level, and teachers are going to make rubrics available, but not as a link. The development team recognized the importance of adding the percent grade component as parent feedback indicated it was something they wished to see as students advance in school. It was discussed at the recent 6th grade open house. There will be parent tech night to dig into how to use and access the information in PowerSchool, and we can look forward to seeing other resources and parent information sessions this fall. So it's not new, but they're just going to learn how to better access it. Like I said, it's a hybrid model. 18 and 19 is 6th grade rollout only, and as the high school and middle school prepare for this type of reporting, Mrs. Michaud stated that she's going to bring information and updates to the CNA committee regularly. There was a block scheduling update, both from the high school and the middle school, from Mr. Strange and from Mr. Flynn. Mr. Strange polled the teachers for both positive and negative feedback. On the positive side, teachers were able to dig into subjects more deeply. They felt they got to know their students better. There was more of a connection. They had more time for grading and prep time during the day because they had that 90-minute block. Mr. Flynn also, let's see, there's less incidents with attendance and like compared to years previous, so their attendance records are better. Mr. Flynn reported that attendance also has improved. Anxiety and stress is down, so there's less students visiting guidance at the beginning of the day because their schedule is just a little bit more manageable. On the high school level, the biggest takeaway, they were able to identify some areas of opportunity for professional development next year around student engagement, really, was the biggest takeaway there. Mr. Pedersen presented, talked about, recognized the new legislation around computer science, moving to engineering and technology. They're watching the legislation pretty closely, and they're aware that of the changes in our educational requirements. He reported that our district was headed in the right direction anyway. There will be some tweaks made at the high school level, but with our engineering program and the variety of courses that we offered, he felt that we were in a really good place to meet those standards as they watch it progress. And Mr. Flynn also talked about the middle school testing summative retake protocol. So that protocol was reviewed and revised to have more of a universal program in place. So moving forward with a qualifying summative, students will have 5 classes to complete a reassessment contract agreed upon by the teacher. They can reassess a specific section rather than having to take the whole entire exam again. So if it was a specific content area in the exam that they struggled with, they don't have to take the whole entire summative over. In 6th grade, students can receive a max score of 90%, 7th, 85%, and 8th, and 80%, which aligns with the 9th grade, the high school requirements. So we had a pretty big meeting. A lot of stuff there, but I thought it was really important information. It was our last meeting for the year, so it kind of recapped everything.
Awesome, thank you.
So I know that was lengthy, I apologize, but I just felt it was important information to kind of get out there. You know.
No worries.
Good job. Danny, anything?
Nope.
Jen, anything? Committee reports? Brian? Sean? Kim?
I just have questions on 2 committees. I'm concerned because the strategic plan has not met, nor the CIP. Don't we usually meet by this time of year, the CIP?
We have not met yet. I'll work on that.
And-
We're working on a strategic plan date.
Okay. As you know, Brian and I both volunteer to help out on the strategic plan.
Dan knows that, right?
Yep.
Any other things for committees? Sean and I did attend a casual lemonade and cookie evening put on by the Sandown chair of the board in Sandown, Mr. Goldman and Mr. Brown, the vice chair. Danville was represented by their chair, Mr. Baraki, and Mr. O'Neill as vice chair, and they had invited the chair of the school board. And it was all 4 towns were invited. Plastow and Atkinson were not able to attend. And it was just a chat around commonalities we might see amongst our towns and school, and communication became the topic a little bit. We didn't make any huge decisions, but it was interesting to have a chance to talk. I don't know if Sean has something different, but it was an interesting evening. We spent a couple hours.
Probably about an hour and a half.
Yeah, and talked about funding, and each town's got a little different thing going on, and school, and there were some suggestions made, and if the communities want us to communicate school board to community, I had said in the past, way in the past, we used to, I'll use Mr. Stokinger, would go community to community and do I call it State of the School report. We talked about that maybe happening again, or a coffee hour, and I said I couldn't speak for the board. I could just say I would come back and we could have some discussions as we go into fall about communicating more. Is that about it, Sean? Did I summarize that? Yeah. So, I didn't want you to think I didn't tell you that I went to that. But it was a very nice evening, and I appreciated being invited. Okay. If there's nothing else then, any reports from the school board, anything you've attended? This is a huge week here. Banquets and meals and
I'd like to bring
concerts and.
I could. Is I've been hearing a lot about this, about the bullying aspect, and with hindsight of the young lady that came here today, I'd like to actually learn more, and I think there's some people new on this board, about the bullying and how the district handles this. From a whole reporting and an investigation part of that, and I know there's a lot of information that floats around. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not. But I think that for me personally, I gotta feel comfortable that I know that the district is doing everything. And I'm not saying that they're not, but I want to be able to understand the whole process of what happens when an incident happens and that whole flow to that. And then I don't know if anybody else is well versed in that, but I think it would be advantageous for everybody on this board to understand that. If you already understand that, that's great. But
Great.
A good starting point would be to watch the TPAF that we did on bullying. Did a couple hour, wasn't that presentation on bullying? Yeah, we did those about a month ago.
Okay.
So I'd watch that and see what you get from that, and if you have questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them.
Right.
Kim, something else? You had your hand up.
We spoke about having the treasurer come in periodically to talk to the board to get updates. We haven't heard anything from our new treasurer.
I reached out I will reach out again.
Okay. Another thing is, I know we have Mr. Campo coming in to discuss the audit. And I know there were some concerns in the audit. My concern about having Mr. Campo just meet with our board is that business management is a function of the SAU. And if we were having a discussion about deficiencies within the business operations, it should include the SAU board. It should not be a Timberlane discussion, because it is an SAU function. So I'd like to motion that we request that, that our board request the SAU to meet at that time with Mr. Campo. I don't know how we can have a meeting without the SAU here.
Other thoughts? She's made a motion.
I'll second that motion.
So what's your motion going to be? To request?
Our board has to request a meeting of, I'm asking our board to request an SAU meeting.
for that same time
For
period.
that same time.
Thoughts?
So how would that work with different entities?
He's here to talk about the Timberlane audit.
Yeah, I can speak to,
But
I can
the-
speak briefly to,
So would we
there's little or no issues with the SAU audit, there's no issues with the Hampstead audit. So, it's a Timberlane issue. Trust me, it's a Timberlane issue.
Yeah, I don't.
I spoke to Mr. Campo. Mr. Campo, I can't go into it. I can do it in non-public.
No.
Well, I think we should sort of non-public because to Kelly's point and to Kim's point, the function is an SAU function, so that maybe the report problem is, I'm looking, me personally, I'm more concerned about the process problem than the physical report.
Right.
But I know that
What?
this board does not have any
We
authority over
don't
that.
have any authority. So, the motion is to ask the SAU, we're asking for the SAU board to form, and we can do that, but I'm not the chairman of the SAU, so
Well-
the chairman of the SAU has to get everybody else here.
I'm sorry, can I intercede? By policy, the SAU policy is if
3
we are
members.
requiring, that our board, or their board, Hampstead, can request a special meeting of the SAU. So what we are doing by taking this vote, if it's in the affirmative, is our board is requesting the SAU board to have a meeting. I would think we'd want to do it when Mr. Campo's here. We schedule it at whatever, 7:30, and then, once that portion's done, then you move into the Timberlane meeting. I think that answers your question, Kelly?
Yeah.
Jen?
I was just gonna ask what time Mr. Campo was coming, so we could, if that would coordinate.
7:30. I'm gonna call back this week to confirm, make sure, so. That's the polite thing to do, once you invited somebody to confirm, so I'm gonna confirm, so I make sure he's here at
I
7:30.
don't know if he was available, if we were to do a 7 o'clock meeting, to invite the SAU board.
I can ask that, but.
You can't invite the SAU board.
Right.
You can request,
Request them.
and they may
Yeah,
meet.
so,
You can't.
They may meet, but if our board is here, we have a quorum.
Correct.
but we don't,
Well, you'd have a quorum.
Well, we have
You'd
a
have
quorum,
the
so
SAU
it becomes
board.
an SAU meeting if we have requested.
who's gonna
one.
really,
No.
I don't know.
I would not want to be a part of an SAU meeting without a whole town here.
I'm
No
not
more
in
than I
favor.
like doing it when there's a whole town missing when we're here.
Well, I
really
certainly
hate
hope they
that.
would agree to come then.
All we can do is make the request.
Make the request, and I don't think we should be waiting till September or October, which is when our next SAU meeting is.
Any other questions?
Can't hurt to ask, I guess, right?
I'm looking up your policy, hold on, I'll be right with you.
Our policy or the SAU policy?
the SAU policy about-
SAU policy.
Do you know the policy?
I'm in favor, I'm not in favor of confusing it anymore by having more people here or trying to get more. I wanted him here, our audit here, our questions. In fact, Kim and I had a discussion about would it be worthwhile for us all to, now that we've had a chance to look at the audit, submit questions so that, again, Mr. Campo can be aware of some of, not every question, I realize, but some that you have come to the top of your head that you want to ask, so he can come prepared and comfortable. So, I'm not in favor of this motion, for that particular reason, it just globs it up more.
I think the problem that we have with this is that Timberlane could have a discussion with the auditors that are doing the Timberlane audit.
That's right.
But any corrective matters that would come out of this board would have to then filter back on up to the SAU to give direction. It isn't like it's all decided here at this
But
table.
it's the Timberlane books.
It's Timberlane books, but it's done by a third party, which is the SAU, which is not under our jurisdiction. Partially under our jurisdiction.
Dan?
Under our jurisdiction.
Well, so for me, this is about Timberlane, about the Timberlane audit, and if we're seeing a deficiency, we need more manpower, whatever it is that we need, and if it has to be done at the SAU, then call an SAU meeting. It's a difference, right? But to have the SAU board in Hampstead listen to questions that I know everybody's gonna ask about Timberlane, it's a waste of their time. The reason that this guy's coming in is not to talk to him about certain things that Hampstead has nothing to do with or whatever. It's about our Timberlane audit. That's what I want to talk to him about. I don't want and if there's corrective actions, as Sean had said, that need to go back to the SAU, then we'll decide whether we want to call an SAU meeting or ask the SAU to meet.
Yeah, the term is may, so you can vote to whatever, and they may or may not meet.
Right.
It's not up to the Timberlane board.
But that's the way I feel this should go. I'm not saying we should meet in September or October. I'm not saying that. But if we deem after we're done meeting with Mr. Campo that there are things that we need to do, then we'll ask for a special meeting of the SAU.
We'd at least
and
have
go
a
from there.
good reason at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just right now, it feels a little early.
Brian?
Makes sense.
Okay, that's fine, but if, I had a brief conversation with the superintendent last night in the parking lot as I was leaving the teacher retirement thing. Did I understand you, Dr. Metzel, that the SAU audit isn't even done?
Is it completed?
I have a complete draft upstairs. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a matter of us. We signed the rep letter and.
Is those last things, the what is it, MD?
MDA.
It's really just a matter of me taking a look at it tomorrow.
Okay, so
But
whether it's
I can-
draft,
yeah.
whether it's draft or not, I guess my point is that here we are, June 7th, and you've already sent us about historical data where some reports have come in August, this kind of stuff, but the fact is, as of June 7th, the SAU audit is not finalized, and we make up 4 of the 5 towns and 77% of the bill. So I don't think that's necessarily a great thing, but I don't care what the reason is, it's not done, it's just not done. So I agree with Kim, but if it's the pleasure of the board, I know no matter what happens to 21st, whether it's by majority vote, or whatever we collectively with management we can come up with for recommendation, we have very limited powers on this board when it comes to dealing with the SAU business office. So that's why it's kind of key to have them.
Kim, and then Jen had her hand up too.
Especially where you're going to have the auditor who worked directly with the SAU office to do this audit, to not have the Hampstead people there, okay? You're now going to have to relay from our board, from Mr. Campo, through our board, back to them. Why not do it directly? Why not have them there so they understand those issues directly that are done, as Sean said, by a third party? We have no control over the SAU as a board.
I can confirm that Hampstead has directly communicated with Mr. Campo in the last week.
Well, I don't know.
No, we're not
Why
relaying
is that
any-
relevant?
Well, it's relevant because Hampstead doesn't have any issues. And the SAU, I believe we got it, you said you got it today, so, his concern is Timberlane. Mr.
Which
Campo's.
makes up 77% of the SAU, and Timberlane's business management is done by the SAU. So that's why the SAU needs to be involved. We cannot have a discussion about any issues without the SAU here. We should not be discussing SAU employees.
So you want me to cancel Mr. Campo then?
Listen, no, I'm saying we should not be discussing any SAU employees without the SAU here. I've heard that many times in conversations. So now this board is saying, we're gonna have a discussion about an SAU management function, and we're not having the SAU.
Who said that?
I'm saying that if you vote against this, this is what you're
No,
saying.
who said we were gonna have that discussion?
Yeah, you're making a lot of.
Absolutely
You're
have to
jumping to
have
this
that.
discussion about SAU management. We're having an auditor come in and talk to us.
About what? What are they coming to talk to
The
us about?
audit.
Which is performed by who?
Our audit.
Performed
Like
by
Campo.
the SAU.
Oh, performed by Mr. Campos' business.
performed by-
On whose books?
On whose book?
On whose books?
Timberlane's
And-
books.
and
And
who-
who
and who's doing
manages
it?
Timberlane's
Who's
books?
doing the work?
Right, so
Who's-
you're,
who manages
I don't like the way
Timberlane's
this
books?
is, whatever.
Who manages the books? Do we have Timberlane bookkeepers? Or are these SAU employees? Who's managing the books? Can somebody tell me are those Timberlane employees or SAU employees? Does no one know the answer to that?
If I had to speculate, I would say SAU
Well,
employees.
Sue, I'll direct the question to you. Who manages our books? Are they Timberlane or SAU employees?
Some of each. I think some of those people are Timberlane employees, not SAU employees. But Mr. Campo has audited the Timberlane books. Whoever did the function, and that's what he's here to discuss with, it's coming to discuss with us. So there's a motion on the floor. Jen, did you have a?
I did. I was going to ask if the SAU audit was done. That was kind of answered, but, so the SAU board needs to meet anyway to accept the SAU audit as well?
They probably wouldn't, I don't know, I don't know how they'll do it.
October. is typically when
October
they
is
do that.
usually when they do it. They get the audit, present it in October, or highlights of it.
So if Mr. Campos comes and has recommendations from the audit that will involve SAU employees, we can take no action on that next time we meet.
He'd make a recommendation about an
If he has
SAU
recommendations of how to address some of the problems that
Well,
were
we
highlighted.
take it under advisement, we're taking all of this under advisement, aren't we?
SAU has one employee, that's me. That's it.
I thought we had
Excuse me?
14 employees
No,
on
the SAU board has one employee, that's me. Those are my employees. I manage them. Mike Campbell doesn't manage my employees. Let's be clear about this.
I'm not saying he manages your employees.
He's making recommendations about how to make some corrections, correct? Going forward.
Right.
If it involves an employee,
Or if it involves any recommendations that that would involve the SAU.
You act on my recommendations, not his. That's how it works.
we take that under advisement, not,
We act on the recommendations of the superintendent, not the auditor.
But we can't even talk about it.
all right,
Wait,
let's
wait,
come
wait.
back
That's
to the
the point
motion.
of the whole matter.
Let's come back to the motion.
Yeah, that's the point.
Everyone understand the motion? Yes? I'm gonna call for a vote then. All in favor? 4, opposed? 5. Danny?
Since we're in off topic or whatever it's called, I would like to
We're in other
ask-
business.
I would like to ask the chair to put on the next agenda about adding possibly an additional SRO at the middle school.
As an agenda item?
Yeah. If Dr. Metzler maybe could reach out to Chief Jones prior to get a
Already
little
done.
bit. What's that?
Can we do-
Already been done.
Can we just do it at the next meeting? I don't really want to do it
Yes.
at this meeting.
Can we have a report on it on the 21st? Does it have to be an agenda item? Can it be part of the administrator's report? Trying to do
I'd
some of
rather
these
an
things that are specific
agenda
questions.
item, because I'm sure other
Okay.
board members might want to discuss it or whatever, and
Okay, well-
just,
Is it a little more comprehensive than just that, too? There's some other,
I'm
there's
sure
some
it
other
is.
things, and I think we'd probably have to go into non-public,
Okay.
because it
Then we'll-
has to do with security.
Kathy, we
Okay.
put that.
which is fine, but I had a number of constituents reach out to me and specifically ask me for that, so.
The middle of the high school.
He said a middle,
Another-
a middle school.
another
It'd be a second campus
Separate
SRO.
campus.
SCR.
Exactly.
School campus.
Any other business before we go back to having to go into non-public for
Staffing.
staffing? Kim?
I just wanted to say that I attended many events this week. the academic achievement dinner for the top students in the graduating class, which was excellent. I commend all those teachers on their statements about the students that they were representing. I attended the junior and senior awards night on Tuesday. That was excellent, where all the lot of memorial scholarships and things are given out. There was over $100,000 in scholarships giving out to the graduating seniors. I attended the STEM night last night, which was where mainly AP courses did their final poster presentations. There were some really interesting physics demonstrations. There was the old Pong games that somebody had put together using potentiometers, which I was quite impressed with. And then tonight was the senior courting night, and that went very well. And they announced the valedictorian, Rachel Paradis, and Brian Desjardins is the salutatorian, and Amber Milken is, there's a name for the third.
Essayist.
Yes. And Brian Desjardins was the only one to get an AP Distinguished Scholar Award, which I think means what? You've got 5 AP, or an average of at least 3.5 on all your AP scores, which was very impressive. So it was a good couple of nights.
Any other school board reports? Sarah and I both attended the retirement dinner, which was beautiful. That was last night. Absolutely beautiful.
So nice.
22 retirees, 16 of them there. It was a beautiful evening. A lot of heartfelt, funny stories, a little bit of ribbing. It was a nice evening.
It was a great evening,
Beautifully done, and we appreciated, I know Sarah and I appreciated the work that
Yeah.
Nancy and her crew did to make it a nice evening for
was
these retiring staff. So they all had smiles on their faces, which is what I said when I spoke. I said, you need to smile, accept smiles, and enjoy this last few weeks, because there's a lot of, like 424 years of service if you add it all up, when you do it that way. So that's a lot of teachers with a lot of time invested in our kids. So that was a nice evening. And then we've got, what else we got coming up this week? Oh, yeah, that graduation thing on Saturday. Hope for good weather so we can have it outside. I know some of us are attending, so that'll be good.
And then
Forgot to mention Brian.
And then a championship volleyball game.
And Brian Desjardins is graduating, and he won scholarships and awards.
That's Ryan
Lavoie.
Lavoie. Lavoie, yes.
Lavoie. So I'm sorry, I forgot to mention him. He received numerous accolades.
Good. So, positive things happening. Great week for our kids and our teachers. And all right, anything else? Because then are we going in right into non-public? So we'd ask for a motion then?
What do we need to go into non-public for? I wasn't here when you said we needed non-public.
The reputation.
See.
Motion to go into non-public, 91A3, paragraph 2, section C. Matters which, if discussed in public, would likely adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member.
Before I call for a poll, just point out to you the school report. It's got a great picture on the back here, the child at the middle school. Great things. This is so fun to read, of all the fun things that are going on all over the district. Great activities, from field days to wellness days to field trips to the ocean. Just good reading and positive stuff. And also I included the tripod information, the question that Kim asked at our presentation about margin of error and percentile rankings. I wanted you to see the information there, digest that, and we can certainly discuss it at a further date, but I wanted you to see that information. All right, poll, all right, take the poll, thank you.
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Doobie?
Yes.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mr. Guy?
Yes.
Mrs. Markham?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
And
Will
Yeah, I guess I
Hi,
do.
we're back
Want me
in,
to say it?
public.
No, I'm good.
I'll, accept a motion.
I said so moved.
I know you did, but it's all right. I make a motion to, accept the recommended, new org chart of administrators put forth by Dr. Metzler.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Ward. All in favor? 9-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we leave, are we gonna stay for the non-meeting, or you wanna hold? So that you can hear personnel? We can't, we need to have a non-meeting if we're gonna do it.
We just do it next meeting?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we can.
That's not a big
Just
deal.
announce that we're gonna have that, so you know what's going on.
Right.
Okay.
Would
All right.
seal the minutes?
That,
At least until we reveal.
so, go ahead then.
Motion to seal the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, are we polling, or are
Yeah,
we?
Mr. Boyle? To seal the minutes, sir?
Just until we.
Listen to it.
Of the
We're
non-public.
polling?
What we just had?
Yes.
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 Mr. Doobie?
Yes, just.
Dr. Farah?
Yep.
Mr. Guide?
Yes.
Mrs. Markham?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
And Mr. Ward?
Yes.
They are sealed. Until further notice.
Anything else to come before the board?
Motion to adjourn.
I'm gonna adjourn. Thank you very much. No motion necessary.